Hello everyone, welcome to What If Naruto Lost Everything and Becomes Shinigami in Bleach Part 2. Before we start, please go support Naruto X 41 for writing that awesome fanfic. Now let's begin. This is the translated version I made. There will be some wrong he or she calling here because it's translated, so let me clear this. Naruto is a male in this story. Chapter 7, Facing a Sacrifice. In the park. In the park, the three figures appreciated everything around them. To tell the truth, the place was full of people unaware of their presence. One of the three figures began to move away while one of the others, a huge and muscular subject with some red hair and a bone jaw, looked at him with a certain anger. "Where the hell do you think you're going? We have something to do, it's not a tourist visit," he said reluctantly with his irritated voice. "He had his own mission, so don't get involved. We should focus on that Kurosaki guy, Yami," said the last of them, small compared to the other, with pale skin with green lines on his face, and with a kind of helmet with a severed horn. "Yes, you do, and have to remind me all the time, Ulquiorra," answered the one now known as Yami to his companion with a serene and expressionless face. The rain of questions did not stop on the blonde, who only smiled foolishly while everyone asked him things. To tell the truth, this kind of attention over time came to bother him a little. Everything was 1,000 times worse or better, depending on how you look at it. When Matsumoto hugged him, sticking too close to the blonde in the opinion of a certain vixen and a certain ex-captain, for his part enjoying the affectionate hug, the blonde had a concern. A few minutes ago, 3 presences appeared. They were strange and had a certain resemblance to that of that crap. Suddenly the good mood stopped. The spiritual pressure of the 2 guys in the park caught everyone's attention. Everyone became quiet and serious. They were not expecting anything like that. Immediately the large group set off on their way, leaving the blonde in their tracks, the place where it was. "Yoruchi, you wa'n't come, Naruto-kun," said the former captain, noticing the blonde fixed in his position. "Naruto, there is a third person moving in that direction," said the blonde, pointing to the east. "Yoruchi, I'm going with you," the golden-eyed woman said, pointing, to which the blonde smiled kindly. "Naruto, it's not necessary. Ichigo will need you more than me," the blonde responded, ready to go after a new fight. "Yoruchi, I refuse to let anything happen to you," said the woman with golden eyes outrageously at the arrogant attitude of our favorite blonde protagonist. Naruto approached the dark-skinned woman and gently caressed her cheek while her heart was racing out of control. The blonde had a very kind smile on her face, and she could feel something hot on her face. She was probably blushing. "Naruto, you are very sweet to worry so much about me, Yoruchi-chan, but nothing will happen to me, I promise. After all, if something were to happen to me, who would give you your milk before going to sleep, right, Nikoheim?" said our smiling blonde before giving her a soft kiss on the forehead, while she turned around ready to leave. "Yoruchi, keep your promise, Naruto-kun." After telling him that, she walked away from the place while the blonde left in search of combat. In the park. In the park, the situation was quite bad for the people. For a moment, a strange force had oppressed them on the verge of unconsciousness. The duet of men dressed in white turned back when they saw the large group of people arriving. The left eyebrow Yami stood up, while an arrogant sneer adorned his face. In front of them was a group of Shinigami, and among them was one with orange hair. "You are Ichigo Kurosaki, right?" said the calm and cold Ulquiorra, staring at the orange-haired man who took a step forward. "Ichigo, yes, it's me. Who are you and what do you want here?" said the orange-haired man in a bad mood while the huge Yami took a step forward. "You're the trash that Aizen-sama sent us to verify," he said with an arrogant voice while everyone tensed a little at the mention of the traitor Shinigami. In Ichigo's eyes, this opponent didn't seem too dangerous. After all, with that size he shouldn't be very fast. Surely his fighting style was based on physical damage. A small, very confident smile adorned Ichigo's face when Naruto's words echoed in his memory. "Never be overconfident, Ichigo," said the blonde silhouette in his mind while the orange-haired man tensed. "Ichigo, hey old man, do you think this guy is dangerous?" said the orange-haired man in his mind to his well-known companion. "Zangetsu, I don't know, Ichigo, but remember what Naruto told you about that guy he fought with," said the thick and serene voice of Zangetsu in the Kurosaki's head. "Ichigo, in that case, if they are like him, I shouldn't let him use that sword," said the orange-haired man discreetly, looking at Yami's weapon. From one moment to the next, the gigantic iron card disappeared and reappeared in front of Ichigo. His great fist descended with force upon him, resonating with a rumble, while the ground beneath the orange-haired man cracked, to the surprise of more than one. The massive fist was being stopped by Ichigo's sword, who looked at him very seriously and fixedly. "Zangetsu, don't give him a chance, Ichigo," said the thick voice of Ichigo's Zanpakuto while for the first time the Raja-haired man attacked to kill. "Ichigo, I won't give it to you, old man," answered the boy with the frown. Back with Naruto. The blonde ran between the trees. He still did not understand why this enemy was moving so far from the city and possible advantages with its inhabitants. The blonde jumped, and after a pirouette in the air landed in the clearing. It was quite large and at a distance to a small lake. He smiled. After all, he believed it while he was training the Suiton mastery. He walked a little and saw the figure on the shore of the lake looking at him in a serene manner. It was a woman, quite beautiful from what the blonde could see, tall and slightly dark-skinned. She wore the classic white clothes, but her jacket was short and left the lower part of her breasts exposed, which by the way were quite large like Matsumoto's. Her belly was flat and narrow-waisted with messy blonde hair tied in 3 long, thin pigtails. Her eyes were an intense turquoise color, and they watched the blonde with a certain coldness. The collar of her long-sleeved jacket covered up to her nose, leaving only her eyes visible. The blonde approached her serenely, noticing her sword hanging horizontally on her slightly short and wide back as she turned towards him. "You found me easily," said the soft and serious voice of the Aranka woman in front of him. "Naruto, I have a talent for finding people," the blonde replied while looking at her from head to toe. "How much do you see me?" she said, a little annoyed by the blonde's continuous scanning of her. "Naruto, you're not what I imagined," our favorite blonde protagonist responded with a small smile on her face, the blue-eyed boy to which she misinterpreted. "Did you think that only men can be ripped?" the blonde said with annoyance in her voice while Naruto just shook his head. "Naruto, no, rather I didn't expect that such a beautiful woman could be a jerk," the blonde said, smiling while she had a slight blush that, thanks to her remains of a mask, was not visible. "Flattery won't do you any good," she said, a little more relaxed, while the blonde remained in her place. "Naruto, I may know why you have come here," said the blonde while she got ready in her combat position. "I came to check if you are a threat to Aizen-sama," she said. As soon as I heard the name, the blonde became very serious. "Naruto, you work for that guy. He's just a bastard. You should stay away from him," said the blonde while she took out her curious sword. It was indeed wide, but curiously it was hollow in the middle, giving it a relatively fragile appearance. As soon as the blonde unsheathed it, he took out a pair of kunai from her sleeves, ready for what was coming. "Do not insult Aizen-sama in my presence." And without further ado, the blonde woman launched an attack against Naruto, who received her head on her. Return to Ichigo in the park. In the park, Ulquiorra was frankly impressed. His eyes opened for the first time in years in that way, showing his emotions, in front of the decapitated body of the former Sword Zero that was dissolving into the air. He didn't have time for anything. As soon as Ichigo moved, he went straight to his neck and severed his head, to the surprise of everyone who knew the orange-haired man. After all, he was rarely so deadly in his attacks. "Ichigo, now it's your turn," said the orange-haired man, pointing at Ulquiorra, who calmly raised his hand while a glowing green sphere was in it. Ulquiorra Zero and the green pillar emerged, destroying the trees in his path while Ichigo evaded the direct attack on him. Ichigo's eyes widened when he felt it. He looked at his 20 and saw the thin blade of Ulquiorra's sword piercing his stomach. He pulled it out with one blow, and the orange-haired man collapsed from the air to the ground with profuse bleeding, while the guy raised his left palm in front of Ichigo's face with another green sphere. "Ulquiorra, goodbye Kurosaki, Zero," and he attacked again. "Ichigo!" everyone shouted as the attack engulfed the area. Back with Naruto in the clearing. In the clearing, the blonde jumped through the air, dodging another thrust from the woman. They collided on the ground and sparks flew when the sword collided with the kunai. To tell the truth, he did not expect her to have so much strength. It was a pleasant surprise. Suddenly she moved a good distance away and raising her sword, gathering her attack. "Blue wave," she said while a huge current of yellow energy attacked the blonde, who only covered himself. Not only was it a faster attack than Craps, but much stronger. When it finally dissipated, the blonde was several meters from her initial position. Ella and curiously wet. The blonde breathed a little agitated when the shine of the sword caught her attention. Ella and fell. He rushed over it and broke it in two, exploding into a ball of smoke. Disconcerting to start, while the blonde appeared several meters away. Naruto, she's very good a little longer, and she finishes me off. I'd better have to be more careful, thought the blonde while a smile appeared on her face. Why are you smiling? She asked, bewildered, while the blonde made signals at incredible speed. Naruto, because you are beautiful and very strong. Sueton. Teppadama water release. Water cannon shot. The blonde's mouth opened and a ball of water came out against the opponent. She couldn't dodge it, and was hit from the front and thrown backwards. She rolled on the ground and got up without believing it. This blonde guy used water for an attack without requiring his Zanpakuto de Ella. She was upset, she underestimated him, and now she wouldn't do it again. Front and dropped her sword that the blonde evaded gracefully to move away to a great distance and launch other water bullets. The sword traveled from one side to the other, cutting them with ease while the blonde moved in all directions looking for an angle to attack. Naruto suddenly flashed and reappeared behind her with the kunai in hand ready to finish her off, but he couldn't do it. Instead he launched another water bullet, and she rolled on the ground annoyed and humiliated. He was very fast, and that wasn't a good sign. Naruto, forgive my rudeness, but you can call me Naruto Namikaze Uzumaki, said the blonde with a hand on his chest and leaning forward a little. Halibel, and Halibel, said the blonde woman, reciprocating Naruto's gesture. Again the blonde attacked, and she raised her sword ready to receive him. It was strange, but for some reason it was fun to fight with the blonde, almost as if they had something in common with Ichigo and the others. Back at the park, Orihime healed Ichigo as best she could. At the last second, Yoruichi rushed in at full speed and managed to rescue the substitute Shinigami from that deadly attack, and right now he was standing in front of that pale and expressionless enemy who remained calm, with the sword still casually ready for whatever came. Yoruichi disappeared from everyone's sight. Ulquiorra's face turned violently to the side when Yoruichi's fist hit him hard. She jumped into the air and landed in the distance while Theora returned to its position as if nothing had happened. For her part, the former captain felt a lot of pain in her hand. Yoruichi, damn, that was like hitting a metal wall. But what are these guys made of, thought the purple-haired girl, while the pale guy raised his hand again. Ulquiorra 0, and the green pillar appeared again. For the goddess of the flash step, it was very easy to avoid it. Jumping in the air, she saw the enemy, that Ulquiorra, moving slowly towards a newly opened fragrant. She stopped inside it to cast a fleeting glance at the orange-haired girl, while she healed Ichigo. Ulquiorra, that might interest Aizen-sama, and after thinking that, he disappeared into the shadows while everyone ran to the side of the injured Kurosaki. For her part, Yoruichi kept silent with her injured hand, thinking about the situation. This guy was no comparison to the one Naruto defeated. She could only hope that the blonde's enemy was not stronger than this one here. With Naruto and Aunt Halibel. The blonde jumped to the side, dodging another water attack from the blonde woman named Halibel, who in turn dodged the continuous water bullets of the blonde ninja, who moved non-stop from one side to the other. She remained standing at a great distance while the center of her sword was filled with energy. Halibel 0, she said while she swung her sword, and a huge cutting energy mixed with the 0 attacked the blonde. The blonde saw him coming with nowhere to go, with only one option to save himself from that devastating attack that was approaching. At great speed he traced the signals and attacked with solid power. Naruto Doton, Dorian Earth Element. Earth Dragon, a gigantic rock dragon, rose up against the attack, and they collided forcefully in a violent clash that echoed in the distance. The smoke increased, and a crumbling pillar of rock was all that remained of the blonde's powerful jutsu. Naruto was a little tired after the intense attack, with several minor blows to his body. Halibel landed on the ground panting and holding her hand. Side one of the rocks bathed with her own power had reached her, and now she had a wound on her left side. She was bleeding a little, but the most annoying thing was the pain. The rock pillar creaked, and she collapsed on top of her as she watched him approach against her. Ella Person was ready to raise his weapon and destroy him when the figure of the blonde emerged quickly with a strange blue sphere in her hand. Naruto Rasengan, said our dear blonde as he hit the rock, and it broke into hundreds of small pieces before Halibel's expectant and incredulous gaze of her. The blonde turned to her, and their eyes met for a moment in which silence reigned. Halibel, you could have defeated me with that when you had the chance. Why didn't you ask her? Confused by her blonde immortal's attitude. Naruto, the truth is that I don't like the idea of killing such a beautiful woman. The blush returned to Halibel's face while the blonde smiled at her. Naruto. Besides, you can still do the right thing, said the blonde, leaving her very disconcerted. Halibel. What are you talking about? The blonde woman asked, quite confused. Naruto, I don't know that Aizen guy, but I can know that he is a bad guy who doesn't care about anyone. I can see that clearly, said the serene blonde while she looked at him in disgust. Halibel, you don't know anything. Aizen-sama saved me and my friends. Because of him we are alive, the woman with turquoise eyes tortured. Naruto, and yet he sends you to fight for him instead of fighting for himself. How much he loves you, said the sarcastic blonde while she glared at him. Halibel, I do it because I owe him obedience, and because he is what I am. I would sacrifice myself for him without hesitation, said the turquoise-eyed woman, irritated by her blonde's words. Naruto, what do you mean by what you are? The blonde asked, confused, while she remained silent before answering. Naruto, every tear represents something. I am the said sacrifice, the blonde woman with turquoise eyes solemnly, while the blonde smiled and she got upset. Naruto, we have more in common than you think. Tell me, do you know he's a Jinchuriki, said the blonde, receiving a negative look. After a long and somewhat vague explanation about her life to Ella and what a Jinchuriki was, the woman's eyes were fixed on the smiling blonde in front of her. He had been a living sacrifice to protect her friends Ella and the village. Perhaps for that reason. They understood each other so well. Now she looked at him in different eyes. Halibel, we look a bit alike, don't we? Plus he's quite handsome, blushed again under her mask and blessed that she still had it. Ella's blonde's hand was covered in a reddish energy, and he approached her a little, but she stepped back before her advance. Naruto, I just want to heal you. Don't worry, said the blonde, and for some reason she let him get closer. She turned her face to the side of her when that delicious and warm sensation invaded her. Suddenly her wound was healed. Naruto, now you are like new. Halibel-chan. She took a couple of steps away and walked towards a black hole, a newly opened throat. Naruto, you don't have to serve her, and you know it, said the blonde to the woman who was already leaving the place. Halibel, I do it because I want to, answer the blonde woman with turquoise eyes seriously while the blonde shook her head. Naruto, if I ordered you to kill your friends you would do it from inside. She looked at him without answering, although the answer was more than obvious. Naruto, he wouldn't sacrifice himself for you, Halibel-chan, and you know I'm right. Then her throat closed. The blonde breathed a little agitated while he thought about his new friend of her. He just hoped that she would make the right decision. He sighed and began to walk away from the area, ready to meet up at the park with the rest of the group. Kuraishi, Naruto-kun, why didn't you use me? Kuraishi whined while the blonde shook his head. Naruto, I didn't want to kill her, and you know it. Kura-chan, the blonde mentally responded to her white-haired weapon. Of course you don't see that if he kills her he couldn't take her to bed with the five of us, said the always cheerful voice of Kyubi in the blue-eyed man's mind. Naruto, that's not what I want. And what is that about the five of us? Our favorite blonde asked, a little confused. Kyubi, well, that's very easy. We are Kuraishi, that busted blonde, the dumb cat, the orange-haired girl, and me, of course, the redhead, responded serenely while her friend squealed with joy. The blonde just shook his head. Sometimes that pair was too perverted. In the hollow world. At night, Okuiora finished showing what happened in the fight with Kurosaki, calling the attention of a certain blue-haired Arankar with traces of mascara on his cheek. They all turned to Halibel, who told about her little battle. Everyone was silent when the night room emptied, and only the riders remained next to Aizen. She doesn't tell us everything, said one of the hooded men while the Shinigami triader listened attentively. Aizen, you don't have to be suspicious, she's loyal, and I doubt she would betray me knowing what would happen to her friends Ella, Aizen said maliciously while the riders agreed. Aizen, well, how are we doing with the investigation of the fragments? The man asked his subordinates seriously. Very soon we will be able to start gathering them, said the Arar with the kanji for fire in his cocky and arrogant voice. Aizen, wonderful, answered Aizen, could soon become a god. For her part of her, and Halibel was walking towards her compound, questioning why she had not told Aizen everything. Who knows, maybe that Naruto guy was right and she still had time to choose the right side. Halibel, Naruto-kun, said the woman with turquoise eyes, remembering the feeling of warmth from Ella's blonde's hand, and again under her mask she blushed. Chapter 8, Proposals and Conspiracies. Everyone in the park was waiting somewhat uneasily. Just a moment ago Yoruichi informed them of the blonde's situation. Immediately more than one was willing to run to his aid, especially a certain blonde, to the annoyance of the golden-eyed girl. For his part, the newly incorporated Ichigo could only remember that guy with dark hair. He was so direct he didn't even try to show his superiority. Just a half-murderer. If he hadn't been for the help of the former captain, he would have died, and that made him wonder something. Ichigo, if he's like the one who fought Sensei, then he can do the same with his sword. If we fight again, he'll tear me to pieces. I need to be stronger, thought the orange-haired man, while everyone turned to the blonde who landed. He was a little beaten up, and with his clothes slightly disordered. Outside of that, he was perfectly intact, although that didn't seem to matter to Matsumoto, who hugged him sweetly, asking him about his health, pressing her breasts tightly against his chest. And again Kyubi's ideas came to him. Mind and cursed, after so many years he was becoming a pervert like that pair. For her part, the captain felt like attacking the hair of the blonde, who fortunately for her was pushed away by the white-haired man. Toshiro, how was your battle? He asked him seriously, while the blonde just smiled. Naruto, well, it was a good fight, Toshiro, the blonde told him, while the young captain got angry. Toshiro, it's Captain Hitsugaya for you, Naruto, he said, annoyed by the blonde's disrespectful way of addressing him. Naruto, I must remind you that he is Naruto-sensei for you, the blonde tortured, staring at him, flaunting his superior position in the school. Next to them, the group of Shinigami and humans looked at the duo, who shot each other angry glances with drops on their necks. They could even swear that they saw small rays flying through the air until they collided with others coming from the other's eyes. To tell the truth, they didn't. They knew whether to laugh or lament. After all, one of them was a captain, and the other a supposed immortal more than 2,000 years old, and they were both acting like a couple of spoiled children. Toshiro, well, enough of this ridiculousness, Toshiro said to Naruto, the white-haired captain taking the matter seriously, while the blonde smiled at her small victory. Naruto, well, if you say so, the blonde told him with that superior smile on his face, while the white-haired man's annoyed look promised a rematch. Toshiro, you destroyed that errant car, right? Captain Hitsugaya said to Naruto. Naruto, no, the blonde simply answered, while everyone looked at him with a little concern. Naruto, he wasn't someone evil, so I saw no need to destroy him, the blonde said to Toshiro. The next thing that followed was an extended scolding from the white-haired captain, who argued some things about natural entities and the innate perversity of hollows and Shinigami, who only managed to make the blonde serious, who was listening to everything attentively, while the white-haired man's companions, they only agreed to what he said. Naruto, that's just stupidity, replied the blonde, making everyone stare at him, while the blue-eyed man walked a little away from the group. Naruto, you say that hollows are human souls that turn evil over time, that only respond to their natural instinct to survive. Tell me you would blame a lion for killing an animal to feed itself, right? Then why do you hate them? Hate only generates pain, believe me, I've seen it. It's true that perhaps the majority are evil beings, but that doesn't mean that all of them are like that. Even among the wildest pack of dogs there is at least one that is calmer than most of them. I don't regret letting him go, and it's because I'm sure that in the end he will do the right thing. And if you who are supposed to be in charge of watching over the destiny of souls do not understand the difference between evil and instinct, then maybe you shouldn't do this job, the blonde told them solemnly, leaving everyone silent. Deep down everyone had a certain resentment towards the masked creatures, but what the blonde argued had a certain reason. Deep down they had countless doubts about it. After all, at what point their duty began to become just a meaningless war. Who knows, maybe Naruto's actions would help change the world. They knew after all they did it once because they couldn't do it again. In a hollow world. While both in the hollow world, more specifically speaking in Aunt Halibel's dominoes, she was admiring the immensity of the desert from a box, still meditating on the words of the blonde ninja. Perhaps she was right and she served an unworthy person. Someone who would never be willing to sacrifice himself for her, or worse yet, that he would not sacrifice his friends just for his own benefit. The truth is that she was not very sure, but the doubt only grew more and more in her mind. Slash? Halibel-sama returned, 3 voices said in chorus behind her while she turned to see her faction of her. The first of her was Apache, a girl with dark hair and peculiar eyes, each a different color, green and red, of a thin body and breasts perhaps cuppy bordering on C, of a narrow waist, and not very wide hips, of long and thin legs. On her head was a fragment of a mask with a kind of horn. She also wore a small white jacket along with pants of the same color. The second was the always serene and polite Sun Sung with long dark hair with flashes of some very blackened green of eyes of a soft violet color with 3 points descending below her right eye. Above it a small crest, the only visible remnant of her mask, wearing a one-piece white suit with very long sleeves that were covering her hands, of a body similar to that of the first. The third of them was Mila Rose, who was the tallest of the three with dark skin, somewhat taller than Halibel herself. She was wearing a peculiar white pleated skirt, and a lower top that held her D-cup breasts from below, slightly covering the perfectly visible egg on her belly. On her head she had some thin remains of her mask that gave her a crown-like appearance over her fluffy, long black hair and pale green eyes. Under her mask the blonde, leader of the group, smiled at the appearance of her three subordinates. To tell the truth, they were her family, she always considered them that way, and the blonde's words resonated in her head again. What would happen if Aizen ordered her to finish them off? Would she do it? Or if he sent them on a suicide mission, would she allow it? In her mind Deella the answer was clear, a definitive no. Deella, she would never let anything happen to her friends Deella. Sun Sung, are you okay? Halibel-sama asked the serene Sun Sung, covering her mouth with the long sleeve of her clothes. Apache, of course she isn't, she's not looking so thoughtful, something must have happened. The always masculine Apache responded in a bad way. Mila Rose, for the first time I agree with the tomboy, said Mila Rose, while the aforementioned agreed until she understood the insult. Apache, who are you calling an overfed gorilla tomboy? The offended woman responds, insulting the black-haired woman. Mila Rose, what did you call me, dwarf? The tall woman responded while the two faced each other. Sun Sung, and there you two go again, you definitely do and know how to behave, Sun Sung told them, covering the smile on her face while the two barked in annoyance. Apache/Mila Rose, you shut up, Sun Sung, the two said at the same time while the aforementioned smiled the more. It was so easy to provoke them. Halibel's smile only expanded more as she watched them fight. It was so common in them. To tell the truth, she was already used to it, and it amused her sometimes, although of course she would never admit it to them. Again the blonde's words resonated in her mind, and she knew for sure she would protect them even if she had to sacrifice herself for them, fighting against whoever it was, even against Aizen himself. Halibel, maybe you are somewhat right, Naruto-kun, thought the blonde-haired girl as she went to stop this little personal war. In the park. Back in the park, a somewhat strange scene was happening. Ichigo was leaning slightly, bowing right in front of the blonde ninja while looking at him, somewhat confused with what he had just heard from the substitute Shinigami's mouth. Naruto, what did you say, Ichigo? The blue-eyed man asked him, even if he didn't believe it. Ichigo. You can train me, the raven-haired man repeated while everyone looked at him in amazement. To tell the truth, they didn't remember that he had ever requested something like that. Naruto, why do you want that? The blonde questioned him, while the boy responded with a frown. Ichigo, it's just that I don't want someone to get hurt. I couldn't do anything against that black-haired guy. If it weren't for Yoruichi-san, he would have killed me. And I don't want someone to get hurt just because of me. I know that you are very strong. And you have more experience than anyone in the Soul Society. That's why I ask you to teach me, the orange-haired man said, staring at the blonde. Naruto, if that's what you want, I'll help you be the best, Ichigo. Count on it, the blonde responded with a big smile, and, in an incredible way, a small, genuine smile adorned the orange-haired man's face. Matsumoto, well, enough of this seriousness, said the always cheerful Matsumoto, approaching the blonde. Matsumoto, tell me, Naruto-kun, you're going to make it up to me for making me worry about you, right? She said playfully while taking him by her arm, pressing her attractiveness against the blonde. Naruto, well, what do you want Matsumoto-chan to do? The blue-eyed man responded while everyone was incredulous at the scene. Matsumoto, take me to dinner and I'll forgive you, she told him, smiling while the blonde agreed at her request. Naruto, it will be an honor to take you to dinner where I pick you up, the blonde replied while the smile on her face grew even more. Matsumoto, well, I live with Oriheim, you can find me there for whatever you want, Naruto-kun, the girl replied, winning at him flirtatiously. Naruto, fantastic, because I picked you up at 7 p.m., the blonde said, smiling. For her part, a certain woman with golden eyes was making a superhuman effort not to jump on the blonde and kill her right there. Yoruichi, you too, Ranjaku. It doesn't matter, I won't let you keep it first. You walk over my corpse, she thought, full of an emotion that she had never felt until that point. Well, Yoruichi was full of jealousy. On her side, Orihime, she watched the scene with a certain pain in her chest without really understanding the reason for it. She could only watch the blonde smile at the woman and sigh with regret. Orihime, I think Ranjiku-san likes sensei well. Orihime was actually too innocent. Toshiro. Wait a second, you're not in charge, Matsumoto, the white-haired captain said, interrupting the scene. Matsumoto Taicho can't do that to me. I want to go out with Naruto-kun, the blonde said pleadingly while the boy denied. Toshiro, we have no duties to attend to, the white-haired man responded, denying his lieutenant's request. Naruto, come on, do and be like that. I'll take good care of her and bring her back to you early, the blonde told him, interceding on behalf of her date. Toshiro, and why should I let her go out with you as soon as we know you? Toshiro spoke again, looking more like a jealous father. Naruto, what are you saying? But it's me, Naruto, your sensei. You're not jealous, right? Are you secretly in love with Matsumoto-chan? The blonde told her with a mischievous smile on her face while the blonde blinked, somewhat confused. Toshiro, what things are you insinuating? The Shinigami responded, shouting at that insinuation. Matsumoto, how sweet that you are in love with my Taicho, but I see him more as a younger brother, the smiling woman told him, while the aforementioned only got even angrier. Toshiro, I'm not in love with you, he shouted, annoyed, while the two blondes stared at him very intently. Naruto, so you are in love, huh? The blonde questioned him, cornering the Shinigami. Toshiro, and if I am, it's none of your business, said, somewhat embarrassed by the curious turn in the conversation. Naruto, who is it? Do I know her? Is it someone from school? The blonde asked him. Maybe spending time with Ino when she was still alive was bad for him. Toshiro, no, and you don't know her, and stop questioning me, the poor white-haired boy answered, somewhat red-faced. Matsumoto, ah, now I know who it is. I already knew that you made a nice Taicho couple, the blonde with the prominent bust told him happily. Toshiro, it's not her, the even redder captain shouted, denying him. In the Society of Souls. Meanwhile, in the Soul Society, a certain dark-haired lieutenant was sneezing without understanding the reason. Perhaps if she got sick it would be better to go see Captain Unohana. After all, with her captain's betrayal, she couldn't afford to get sick. Somewhere else. At Captain Yamamoto's residence, he was still thinking about the situation of that blonde guy. He honestly hoped that it was not related to that legend. After all, if it was so, it could become an even bigger problem to join Aizen's side. The mere idea of hollows wielding elemental attacks caused him a serious itch. He only had to wait for the next report from Captain Hitsugaya, hoping to dispel his suspicions. In the park again. Back at the park, a more than happy Matsumoto was finalizing the last details with the blonde about when to pick her up. On one side, the confused and annoyed white-haired captain was still trying to understand how they convinced him, and beyond, the group of Shinigamis, Ichigo included, lipped with a huge drop at the scene of the blondes talking. The confused captain and the golden-eyed girl surrounded by a murderous aura while looking at the blonde lieutenant, all of them had the same idea in their heads. Naruto is peculiar, after all, he was responsible for all this. Meanwhile, with Aizen. At night, Aizen eagerly admired the information gathered by the minor Arankar who he had left with their mission already completed. This would undoubtedly help him achieve his goal. Aizen-sama already has the information, said the writer of the kanji of eternity, appearing behind the traitor. Aizen, yes, they already gave it to me, but don't appear like that anymore. Sometimes I think you materialize out of nowhere, Aizen told him, hiding his surprise from him very well at the appearance. I'm sorry, it's a custom that's hard to forget, the writer said, offering apologies to his leader. Aizen, it's okay. When will the harvesting begin? He asked anxiously and with a very confident smile. After the last full moon of autumn they will begin to become visible little by little, when winter begins, his rider responded with a bow as he left the room. Aizen, very soon I will become a god, said the Shinigami while he unrolled an old scroll with a drawing of 9 animals with tails each in front of a small black sphere. For his part, the rider met up with his other companions, who were waiting for him more than anxiously. As soon as I entered the room, the door closed. Make sure no one spies on us, he said to the darkness while a figure bowed slightly before disappearing into the shadows. I'm still wondering how I got here, the rider with the earth kanji curiously said. One of many became a hollow, the man of eternity. answered as he approached his companions. Well? The man with the kanji for heaven asked him coldly. Everything is going perfectly. Soon we will begin to gather them, and when we have them we will be able to get rid of that stupid Shinigami. He responded with his malevolent and treacherous voice. I only care about one thing and you know it. The bearer of the fire symbol told them, speaking for the first time. We know, you don't have to worry, you'll have what you're looking for, but I still don't understand that fixation of yours. The man from land said mockingly. I just want him to pay. I've been rotting in hell for 2 millennia because of him, and I want to see him once and for all, he said, extremely upset as he walked out to the balcony. It's always been like this, said the man of eternity, looking at him alone on the balcony contemplating the false sunset in the distance. That obsession of his killed him in the first place, Kukuku, and there is no doubt that those who are born to hate always fall into revenge, Kukuku. The earth guy laughed perversely. On the balcony? On the balcony, the man wrapped in that white tunic looked at the horizon. On his face some remains of bandages covered his face, leaving only his black eyes full of hatred visible, while he caressed a thin sword with a white handle and thought about his objective of him. Very soon I will be able to give you proof of what I suffered for you, Naruto, he thought, sinking even deeper into his resentment of him, the now recognized Sasuke Uchiha. With Naruto. Night had fallen on the city and a smiling blonde was walking down the street after saying goodbye to Yoruchi, who told him that he had a matter to attend to. He was wearing brown pants with a cream-colored shirt with a black leather jacket. He arrived on time at the orange-haired woman's residence, ringing the doorbell. Orihime, good night, said Orihime, opening the door and blushing immediately when she saw the blonde. Naruto, good night, Orihime-chan, are you ready? Matsumoto-chan, the orange-haired girl didn't even have to answer. Matsumoto here, I am Naruto-kun, said the blonde, appearing in the hallway wearing a short black dress that barely reached mid-thigh, revealing her long, shapely legs, and higher up the straps of her dress revealed a large cleavage that exhibited the woman's breasts, almost to the point of breaking the fabric. She turned around with her long blonde hair loose, revealing a bit of her bare back. Matsumoto, how do I look, Naruto-kun? The smiling blonde asked him. Naruto, you look beautiful, Matsumoto-chan, the blonde replied while offering his arm to the girl, who took it quickly. Matsumoto, see you later, Orihime, the blonde said happily while the girl became a little depressed. Naruto, don't act like that, Orihime-chan, if you want, next time I'll invite you out, the blonde said, smiling while the orange-haired woman shook her hands quickly. Orihime, no sensei, it's not necessary. Everyone laughed and the pair left while the girl closed the door and imagined a date with the blonde and immediately turned very red. With the blonde couple. On the street, everyone admired the happy couple as they walked towards an elegant French restaurant. As soon as they arrived, they agreed, and the blonde, like a gentleman, brought the table closer to the blonde while the murmurs of the nearby diners reached her ears. Of the blonde lieutenant, making her smile even more, they said things about the beautiful couple and the gentleman's nature. The blonde sat down and they began their dinner. Outside the restaurant. Outside the restaurant, on the roof of the front building, a small, dark feline figure spied on them with determination, without taking his eyes off them. The blonde caressed Matsumoto's hand, who only smiled and blushed a little. His claws emerged from his paws. Matsumoto leaned a little over the table, letting Naruto appreciate her cleavage even more. Fury invaded the cat. Then the blonde gently kissed the hand of the very red Matsumoto, and his claws pierced the concrete of the roof. With Naruto and Matsumoto. Leaving the restaurant, the two strolled around the city for a bit, enjoying the cool night, while the feline silhouette stalked them from every corner. From a distance, the blonde tripped and fell into her blonde's arms. Little by little, their lips came closer. They were almost kissing if it weren't for the flower pot that flew by and almost took the blonde's head off. They had no idea where it came from. Far from them, the annoying cat cursed Matsumoto's reflections of him. The movie time then continued. They went on to watch a movie probably about romance, and the cat sneaked in as best she could. Unfortunately, one of the ushers caught her, and while she was struggling to be free, he threw her into the alley next to her, among the garbage. The annoying cat with golden eyes emerged, swearing revenge against that fool. Yoruchi, I won't escape. I swear I'm going to catch you, the golden-eyed girl said to the wind, while the boats moved behind her. The icy wind blew and a silhouette emerged from among them. It was relatively a boy like a cat. It was a feline hollow with its dirty orange fur covered by bony scales on its back, with a hollow in the middle of its body and with large claws on its paws. On its face the classic hollow mask with long ears resembling demonic horns, and those feline and malevolent yellow eyes. Meow, he meowed annoyed, assuming that what Yoruchi said was for him. Her snout opened and a red sphere appeared. That's when she recognized him. Yoruchi, it can't be, The cat from hell, the golden-eyed girl squealed, very worried, when suddenly the Zero approached the alley. With Naruto and Matsumoto. Back with the couple, and after a fun action and comedy movie the other shows were sold out, the blonde returned to Matsumoto at Oriheim's residence. The clock struck almost midnight when the blonde woman returned her jacket. Matsumoto, thank you for lending it to me so I don't get cold, Naruto-kun, the woman with light eyes said, smiling. Naruto, a pleasure, Matsumoto-chan, the blonde replied while she remained still in her position. Matsumoto, aren't you going to kiss me? The blonde asked, straight to the point. Naruto, excuse me? The blue-eyed man answered, more than confused. Matsumoto, come on, Naruto-kun, a date isn't perfect without a kiss, and this was almost... She couldn't finish speaking when the blonde was already kissing her sweetly. They were wonderful moments that when they separated the woman was left a little blushed and lost. Naruto, good night, Matsumoto-chan, the blonde said goodbye. Matsumoto, yes, good night. As soon as he entered the house a squeal of joy escaped his mouth before he fell onto the sofa, touching his lips. At Naruto's house. Back at her home, the blonde entered only to come across a Yoruchi adjusting some bandages on her new wounds. In the end she was barely able to escape from that abomination. She still wondered how something so small could be so deadly. Immediately the blonde tended to her wounds, with a little healing chakra. The woman's face reddened a little at the blonde's touch. They stared at each other very closely, and it was she who started the advance. She approached Naruto and kissed him gently on the lips while he reciprocated with joy. Suddenly he carried her bridal style and took her to the bedroom, then placed her on the bed, and she was even redder. Yoruchi, Naruto-kun, so soon? I don't know if I'm ready, but for you I'll do my best, the golden-eyed girl thought with a sweet smile on her face while the blonde left the room. Naruto, have a good night, Yoruchi-chan. I'll see you tomorrow and we'll talk about following people on their dates, Ella, the blonde told her with a smile on her face. Ella, while he closed the door, leaving her in shock. He had located her from the beginning. Lying on the couch, the blonde wondered how he got into this trouble after all. The same night he kissed two beautiful women, and he loved each one in their own way. Well, it was time to sleep. It was a good idea to gag and tie Kyubi and Kuraishi so that they wouldn't be bothering him during his date with Matsumoto, although when he let them go he would have to deal with their anger at him. Chapter 9, A Peculiar Teacher. Yoruchi was red with embarrassment at this very moment. Under the covers of the blonde's bed she could only think about her recent actions of the night. She never acted like that with anyone. Hell, she probably looked like a crazy stalker following the blonde at all times, but something was what most touched her mind. The blonde's soft kiss before bringing her to this bed. Just remembering it made her very red. She sighed while she turned in bed trying to fall asleep. The blonde's scent still lingered on the sheets, while she sniffed hard. Yoruchi, Naruto-kun, purred her soft voice as she closed her eyes, surrendering to a sleep not suitable for minors. For his part, the blonde was lost in the corridors of his mind that led him to a small room in a house where his beloved tenants lived. To tell the truth, he was not very sure of what he was about to do, but it had to be done, and better at once than just postponing it and letting it get worse. Then he gathered his courage and entered the small room. Immediately the blonde fainted from the nosebleed at what he saw. In front of him the still tied-up Kyubi and Kuraishi were naked, looking at him longingly with their legs slightly apart. No need to be more descriptive, right? The blonde was unconscious and the two girls laughed pervertedly while they dragged him to a bed. How they untied the blonde he would never know. Kuraishi, hey, what if we're going to grape him? The white-haired girl asked. Kyubi, I would like it even more if he graped us, he. The redhead laughed pervertedly while a similar laugh escaped from the other girl. Kuraishi, I love how you think, Q-chan. I told you, he said, smiling with some blood coming out of his nose. Kyubi, many times, friend, come on. Let's go to bed with the one who I want to see his face when he wakes up, he, the bitch mocked, imagining the scenario. Kuraishi already prepared the camera. As soon as he wakes up we'll take the photo, he, the other laughed while the two still naked got into bed to sleep comfortably, hugging the blonde. The next morning Yoruichi was surprised to see the blonde eating some cereal for breakfast, with 2 rolls of paper on his nose. It was strange to see him like that, so she decided to tease him a little. Yoruichi, good morning Naruto-kun, she purred with a soft and melodious voice, entering the kitchen with a sway in a way very similar to Matsumoto's walk of hers. Naruto, good morning Yoruichi-chan, the blonde replied, somewhat blushing with her attitude of sitting on her lap without warning. Yoruichi, you had a nice dream, she told him. Immediately the moans returned to the blonde's mind that woke him up in his subconscious to find himself embraced by the other 2 naked girls covered by a sheet. In some strange way that image changed. Adding Yoruichi to the mix, the blonde fainted again, while the golden-eyed girl laughed out loud, accompanied by the blonde's 2 tenants. Kuraishi, ha 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 ha, I love your jokes Q-chan, ha 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 ha, said the white-haired girl, dying of laughter. The substitute Shinigami, Ichigo Kurosaki, was already yawning in his spiritual form in the forest where the day before he fought against the blonde. As soon as the blonde agreed to train him, he told him that he would see him in this place at 7 a.m. to wait for him without no matter what. To tell the truth, Ichigo was expecting some kind of surprise attack, not a delay of more than 3 hours from the blonde. Somewhere surrounded by clouds, a certain man with silver hair and a mask on his face looked proudly at the mature attitude of his blonde student. Naruto, good morning Ichigo, the blonde greeted him, landing happily in front of the orange-haired man who was glaring at him. Ichigo, you're late, he said, very annoyed, narrowing his eyes. Naruto, I'm sorry, I got lost on the path of life, the blonde replied while laughing inside. Now he understood why Kakashi was always late, and said that it was very funny. Ichigo, Dio and Lai, the boy with a frown shouted, annoyed at his new teacher's irresponsibility. Naruto, don't be angry. Also, I remember telling you to arrive at 7. I never told you that I would arrive at 7, right? The blonde said, smiling, while poor Ichigo looked at him in disbelief with a drop on the back of his neck. Ichigo, but that was implicit in what you said, Kurosaki spoke to him while the blonde became thoughtful. Naruto, Lesson 1 Ichigo, I am the most unpredictable person you will ever meet. Pay attention to what I say and don't assume anything or you will have a very bad time, the blonde said, smiling while Ichigo nodded resignedly with only one idea in his head. Ichigo, what trouble did I get into, was what Kurosaki thought. The orange-haired man was somewhat disconcerted. They were in the middle of a clearing and the blonde was circling around him without saying anything or doing anything. Finally, and with a smile on his face, he gave him an order. He asked him to put his sword against a tree. He returned a few seconds later to find a surprise. Zangetsu was stuck right in front of the blonde. He turned back and looked at his weapon, still there. Naruto, this is a copy, Ichigo. I made it for you to train, the smiling blonde told him. Ichigo, wait, if I asked you to train me yesterday, how did you do that so quickly? The orange-haired man questioned his blonde teacher. Naruto, that's my little secret. Now comes on, pick her up, the blonde told him, to which the orange-haired man obeyed. He grabbed the weapon by the handle and pulled hard. His entire body immediately tilted as soon as the weapon left the ground. He had to hold it with both hands so it wouldn't fall. This sword was quite heavy. He looked at the blonde with doubt in his eyes and he just smiled. Naruto, don't complain, he doesn't weigh that much, he's only 20 kilos, the blonde told him, downplaying it while a huge drop appeared on the back of the substitute Shinigami's neck. Ichigo made several movements suggested by the blonde to adapt to the weight of the weapon. It was about 20 minutes in which finally the boy with the frown managed to swing it without almost falling to the ground. The blonde applauded very happily for the small achievement of his orange-haired student. Naruto, well, now let's go to this nice test. You see this, the blonde said, showing him a small bell. Naruto, you have to take it off, no matter what, just do it. Okay, you have an hour, he finally told him while the orange-haired man charged forward. He unleashed a downward thrust that the blonde evaded by moving to the side. The sword rose in a horizontal cut, and the blonde jumped. The annoying orange-haired man began to chase him throughout the clearing, getting even more and more tired with the heavy weapon. At the end, he had him cornered against a tree and attacked head-on. The blonde moved very quickly towards him and delivered a powerful blow to his stomach. The air left the orange-haired man, who fell to his knees while the weapon fell to the ground with a loud bang. He looked and saw the blonde very serious in front of him. Naruto, I never said I wouldn't attack. Remember the first rule, Ichigo. I also noticed that you were hasty. You must learn to be patient and wait for the right moment to launch a powerful attack or a precise blow like the one I gave you," the wise blonde warrior told him. After a short break, the orange-haired boy was more than ready to continue. He was once again alone in the center of the clearing, the blonde with that big smile prepared for the next point in the orange-haired boy's formation, who for some reason felt somewhat worried about the way the blonde smiled. "Naruto, let's see how you fare against multiple opponents." Ichigo, Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Just as shadow clones' smoke explosions covered the clearing. Once the color on the orange-haired man's face had faded, a nervous expression was given to his face. Around him there were at least 100 smiling blondes, all with a kunai in their hands, looking at him like they were targets. "Naruto, don't die," Ichigo the immortal blonde told him, while the army of clones attacked the substitute Shinigami. As best he could, Ichigo jumped to the side, dodging the first 5 clones while the rest chased him everywhere. To tell the truth, it was a funny image to see Ichigo running for his life while the bunch of blondes tried to tear him apart. For his part, the original Naruto was on the branch of a tree calmly eating a steaming glass of instant ramen. "Naruto, training really makes you hungry," said the happy blonde, while in the distance the orange-haired boy cursed his irresponsible teacher. Somewhere else, in the Soul Society, Yamamoto was more than impressed with the white-haired captain's latest report. To tell the truth, the idea of an immortal human being over 2,000 years old sounded very far-fetched, even more so with that supposed lost age of humanity. How could this guy be honest after everything that happened with Aizen? He couldn't take risks, and only one person could clear him of his doubts about him. He got up and walked slowly towards a remote area. To tell the truth, there were only a few who came to this area. In the distance he saw the house. It was quite elegant, worthy of some clan. He knocked on the door and a kind old woman opened the door. She had gray hair, and you could see that she was a beautiful woman in her youth. "Yamamoto, is you? Look how you've aged," the smiling woman told him while the old captain smiled. "Yamamoto, and you're still the same. Tell me if he's at home," the man asked the kind woman. "Of course, she never goes out since she retired. She's painting or reading all the time," she moved, and the old leader entered. He knew the house very well. After all, he spent a lot of time here when he was just a lieutenant. He walked down the long hallway to the tea room that led out to the back garden. There he was, as always, painting the landscape, wearing simple clothes. To tell the truth, he always hated Shinigami clothing. He was, as he remembered him, somewhat bald, and with his old face, and with that small white beard on his chin. "Hello, Yama, what do you bring you here?" the kind man said, putting his brushes to one side to look at the old man. "Yamamoto, you haven't aged at all," Taicho Yamamoto said affectionately towards the old man. "Yama, I'm retired, you don't have to call me Taicho anymore, and you know it," he replied, inviting him to sit down. "And tell me, you still don't think about retiring? I'm pretty sure you'd like more time for yourself," I asked him with a slight smile. "Yamamoto, I still don't have a good successor, but that's not the point, Taicho," he said, getting serious. "I guessed it. What's going on?" he asked seriously while Yamamoto explained the current situation to him. The man was frankly impressed with what Yamamoto told him. To tell the truth, he did not expect that after so much time he was still alive. He smiled nostalgically as he remembered it. Yamamoto was bewildered. He did not remember having seen his Taicho like that before. The man took a puff of his pipe and then smiled. "I'm going to tell you a story that I think will enlighten you a lot, Yama," he said calmly with a big smile on his face. "Yamamoto, I hear you." Sarutobi Taicho, the old Shinigami, answered, the now recognized as Hiruzen Sarutobi, also known as the god of shinobis, while the man told him the story of Naruto Uzumaki. Again with Naruto and Ichigo. Back in the clearing, Ichigo was breathing more than tired. He was covered in sweat with missing parts of his clothes, disheveled and very upset. After all, the blonde forgot to mention that some of those clones exploded on contact. He advanced very furiously, rumbling the ground under his footsteps. Almost like a giant beast approached the blonde, who was finishing his 10 glass of instant ramen. "Naruto, this is not as good as Ichiraku's, but it's not bad," said the blonde, looking at the already empty glass. "Ichigo, you," the orange-haired man shouted, looking at the blonde while pointing at him with the heavy sword. "Naruto, you survived very well for you, Ichigo," the happy blonde told him. "Ichigo, how could you be so calm? You almost killed me," the orange-haired man shouted extremely outrageously. "Naruto, don't be so whiny. You beat them. I bet your reflexes are more than awake now, the blonde said, smiling as he approached the orange-haired boy who had an eyebrow trembling. Ichigo, that doesn't matter because you didn't tell me that some could explode, the orange-haired man shouted angrily. Naruto, rule number 1, always keep it in mind, and rule number 2, in a real fight your opponent will rarely tell you what he is going to do. You must be ready for anything, even the dirtiest tricks like this. As soon as I finished speaking, one last clone emerged from the ground, exploding in front of the orange-haired man while flying through the air. Naruto, I think I went a bit too far, was what the blonde murmured with a drop on the back of his neck. The orange-haired man got up, at first somewhat annoyed, but in his mind appeared that moment when that black-haired guy stabbed him in the back. In the end, Naruto was right about that last point. He walked a little more seriously to the blonde and indicated that he was ready to continue. The blue-eyed man was somewhat bewildered by the change in attitude but smiled. Apparently Ichigo was taking it well. Naruto, well, it's time for a one-on-one fight, said the smiling blonde while the orange-haired boy raised the heavy substitute weapon and got into position. There was a ball of smoke that dissipated, blowing up, the blonde carrying a huge zanbato with a circular hole almost at the end of it. It looked quite heavy, but the blonde swung it from side to side with one hand while he looked at it, remembering the story. First time I met her. Naruto, this sword belonged to a great swordsman. It is called the Kubikiri Hocho, and it is very powerful. Ready or not, here I come, Ichigo, and then the blonde attacked. As best he could, Ichigo covered himself with his weapon while sparks flew and he was pushed back slightly by the blonde's blow. The orange-haired man took the initiative by attacking head-on with powerful movements supported by the weight of his weapon. Each blow was blocked by the zanbato that the blonde wielded. To the substitute Shinigami's surprise, the blonde wasn't making the slightest effort. Once again, the blonde went on the offensive and Ichigo dodged for his life. Somewhere else. At night, the quartet of riders was gathered again in their private room, listening to the latest news from their little spy. Until that moment, unknown to everyone else, it seemed that the hextuple sword was planning a raid in search of a fight against that Ichigo. In reality, they did not care much. I'll go. I don't want to wait any longer for my revenge, said the guy with the fire symbol, annoyed. I'm afraid you'll have to wait. You can't give away our existence, the guy with the sky kanji said coldly. You don't command me, he said in an arrogant voice. You will obey? He said with his slightly annoyed voice while his tunic swayed a little. Suddenly the vengeful subject was embedded in the wall with his entire body hurting like hell, while the invisible force oppressed him, more and more against the wall that was cracking more and more. You will obey me, understood, he repeated with his icy voice, and his victim acknowledged. He fell to the ground with his hood turned, revealing the furious face of Uchiha Sasuke with the piece along his jaw of some animal, specifically a kind of jackal, on the right side of his face. Always so impatient, Sasuke-kun, kukukuku, laughed the guy with the earth symbol. Sasuke, shut up, Orochimaru. Your laughter makes me sick. The aforementioned Orochimaru only laughed even more while the Uchiha planned more revenge. Will that attitude kill you again? The man with the kanji for heaven told them coldly while the room remained silent. Once we gather the fragments, nothing will stop us and we can be the true masters of everything. And I won't have to put up with that stupid Shinigami. It will be like this or I stop calling myself Madara, Uchiha thought resentfully, the now recognized as Uchiha Madara, while he only watched his three companions argue about the younger Uchiha's attitude. Again with Naruto and Ichigo. Back at the park, the orange-haired boy was more than exhausted. In front of him, the serene blonde was just beginning to sweat while he was bathed in the salty liquid. He got up again, making the blonde smile even more. He had a strong will, and that truly pleased him, and to tell the truth, that stubborn character reminded him a bit of himself. He attacked again with great strength, and the metal resonated. Little by little, Ichigo was pushed back again when a wicked voice came to his mind. What's wrong, King? Are you getting beaten up? The perverse voice of his inner soul told him. Ichigo, don't get involved, you hear me? The orange-haired man in his head, he demanded. It's a shame you don't send me around, he replied mockingly. Naruto was frankly confused with what he was seeing. From one moment to the next, Ichigo stood still, holding his head while shaking his head vigorously. And now he was staring at the sky motionless. He lowered his head and the blonde became even more confused. His eyes had turned black and yellow while something began to cover his head. From one moment to the next he launched himself against the blonde at a much higher speed, as he could block the sword blow while a demented smile adorned Ichigo's face. The blonde sword barely blocked Ichigo's attacks while that crazy laughter echoed throughout the place. He knew then that the guy he was fighting was not Ichigo. A Rasengan formed in his hand and he embedded it in the orange-haired man's stomach, who flew against a tree, splitting it in half. He tried to get up but struggled again while his eyes returned to normal, and he ripped off the mask that was beginning to form on his face. "Naruto Ichigo, you have something to tell me," the blonde said seriously and coldly while the orange-haired boy lowered his head. "Ichigo, is this okay to tell Naruto-sensei?" Ichigo sighs. "This is okay to be wide. In the Society of Souls." Back at the Soul Society, Yamamoto was more than shocked with what he heard. Apparently everything they found out about the blonde was true, and he learned new things such as his status as a demon prisoner, although he did not tell the captain that. Hitsugaya, perhaps his immortality was some gift after freeing the beast. Yamamoto, now more than ever we need him on our side, was what the captain commander thought. He called one of his subordinates, and ordered him to bring someone. Again with Naruto and Ichigo. In the clearing, Naruto remained silent before the orange-haired man's great revelation. Now more than ever he was determined to help him, but dealing with a demon bitch was not the same as dealing with an internal hollow that if it takes over you would never leave you, and that would live only to kill and destroy. "Naruto eats Ichigo, we have to talk to Urahara," said the blonde, standing up. "Ichigo with Urahara-san?" the orange-haired man questioned. "Naruto, if perhaps he can help us with this." Both set out to search for the shadowed man in the hope of a light in this internal problem. For his part, the blonde promised to help Ichigo in any way he could, not let him become a monster, as I feared he would be one day. Again in Soul Society. In Alma Society, Yamamoto for the next few minutes considered the possible positive and negative consequences of what he was about to do, but he did not want to lose the possibility of having the blonde as an ally, much less lose him in favor of the traitor Aizen. "He sent for me to call Soteishu," the woman said as she entered the old Shinigami's office. "Yamamoto, yes, I need you to bring that guy named Naruto here," he told him, sure of his words from him, although with doubts in his mind from him. "I'll catch him, don't worry, sir," he repeated, accepting his mission from him. "Yamamoto, I don't want you to arrest him. I just want you to bring him in so we can talk to him," Yamamoto told him to make his instructions clear. "I understand, sir. Where can I find it?" the woman asked him. "Yamamoto, I understand that you are living with the former Captain Yoruchi," was what the old man said without mincing his words. How can that subject dare to dishonor my Yoruchi-sama? I'm going to attract him after castrate him," and he ran away, destroying everything in his path. "Yamamoto, maybe I shouldn't have sent Captain Soi Fong," the old Shinigami said to himself. Chapter 10: The Killer Bee. The week had passed quite normally for the students, between classes, homework, projects, the occasional party, and very repetitive visits to the hospital due to cases of extreme fatigue. Yes, in short, the blonde teacher was somewhat demanding. Although for him this was nothing, since he was always emphasizing their terrible attitude and lack of condition, using Ichigo as an example of something positive. Immediately the collective hatred of the common students was fixed on the orange-haired boy, who continually wondered how he ended up in this situation. Every afternoon he left school and went home, did his homework, hit his father a little, something not very often and set off in search of his blonde teacher, always finding him in that same forest. The first few days were death for the substitute Shinigami, who always ended up half dead on the ground, but little by little he was getting into shape, and curiously it was easier for him to swing his substitute weapon in his attempts to kill the blonde, who smilingly only congratulated him. But a doubt still lingered in the air, that inner hollow always laughing and waiting for his opportunity to take control of Ichigo. Today was no exception. After a brief beating from the blonde when he was hollow, a tired Ichigo raised his sword ready to retire. To his house, his teacher had already left when that happened. There was a guy in formal clothes right in front of him. I mentioned that he was wearing an orange shirt, and with a mask covering his face, staring at him. "Ichigo, who are you?" the orange-haired man asked the stranger, who removed his mask, revealing the sharp, smiling face of a blonde subject. "You are like I know," she said happily, while the orange-haired boy did not understand her words. "You're a little distracted, aren't you?" He lifted the mask and the orange-haired man understood. This guy also had an internal hollow. "If you want to talk, tell Urahara to send you with us. I'm Shinji along the way, and then the one already known as Shinji disappeared into the forest. Ichigo didn't know what to think. He'd rather talk to Naruto about this later. After all, the blonde had already left, and he had no idea where he lived. Now that he thought about it very carefully, he didn't know many things about his immortal ninja master of more than 2,000 years of age. He went home hoping to see him the next day in class. For his part, the subject called Shinji walked disinterestedly towards a warehouse in the industrial zone of the city, completely ignorant of his blonde tracker. Naruto, I wonder if you are the guy Urahara was talking about, what the blonde thought following the man. He entered the cellar, and the blonde wanted to follow him, but an invisible force opposed him. Naruto, a kind of barrier. Interesting, thought the blonde with a smile, while with a jutsu learned from the old pervert of the toads he opened a small door. He entered quickly and found nothing more than just a kind of entrance to a basement. Naruto, let's see what's down here, said the blonde, and then he walked slowly inside the stairs and was impressed, since before him a very wide space opened up similar to some kind of plane. To tell the truth, he was impressed, and that didn't happen to him every day. Who the hell are you? A thin blonde girl wearing some red and white clothing with her pale blonde hair arranged in two pigtails told him in a bad way. Naruto, I'm Naruto. Nice to meet you, he said, smiling while she attacked him without hesitation. A front kick that incredibly missed. He kept trying to hit him, but each blow was dodged with great ease. Hey, I'm playing, said a cheerful, slim, green-haired girl before launching into combat. She was faster and stronger, but the blonde still dodged her blows too easily, which was starting to bother someone. Damn it, stop moving so I can hit you, the annoying blonde said while Naruto dodged a kick from the green-haired girl. Naruto, no thanks, I wouldn't like to be your punching bag, the blonde replied happily. Are you a then? The girl took out a sword and passed her hand over her face while a creepy mask covered her face. She attacked with force and speed while the blonde struggled to avoid her with great difficulty. The girl in green also covered her face with a rather peculiar mask. She moved much faster and began to hit the blonde with force. That's the guy Urahara was talking about, saying a tall man in sports clothes and gray hair, to his other companions who were watching the fight from a distance. Shinji, if it's him, he moves well to fight against Hiyori and Mishiro at the same time, said the subject named Shinji to his other companions. True, but as long as it doesn't make Hiyori angry, it would be interesting to meet him, was what another male with long blonde hair said. We should help him, don't you think? Said to a large man with pink hair timidly. I prefer to keep watching that specimen fight, just look at him, was what the last woman wearing glasses said with a certain lust. A flash caught them all, and they were slightly alarmed when Hiyori's sword changed, showing her Shinkai transforming her sword into a sort of saw-like weapon as she brandished a frontal attack against the blonde who was barely dodging her right now. Naruto, there's no natural chakra here. How strange. Heikyu-chan, lend me some. Okay, the blonde said kindly to his inner vixen, who responded with a loud yes. He was cornered and she was going to kill him. The Vizard ran to the blonde's aid, but before they got there the unthinkable happened. Hiyori's sword was being stopped by the blonde's hand, which was now burning as if it were made of some kind of golden fire. Naruto, well, if you all want to fight, come here, I'll wait for you, was what he said, staring at the rest of the group. In a hollow world. At night, a certain dark-haired man walked more than annoyed through the corridors of the immense castle. To tell the truth, he would prefer to go out and kill the blonde at this moment, but right now he had to obey orders. That guy from the sky was truly powerful, and he didn't like to admit it. But surely in a fight with him he would tear him to pieces without any problem. To tell the truth, he was powerful. He was on par with the first sword already in his resurrection, and releasing all his power none of the swords would be able to defeat him, and still that guy would kill him. It was scary. I didn't recognize it, but I was very sure that just maybe it would sweep away that society of souls. He was wandering through the halls when he accidentally ran into her. It was Halibel, who was still meditating on what the blonde had told her earlier. She listened attentively to his monologue hidden in the shadows. Halibel, maybe Naruto-kun is right and I shouldn't give my loyalty to Aizen, was what she muttered before walking away towards her subordinate's fight that was already echoing in the distance. Sasuke, so this bitch is a traitor. Well, I think I'll get my revenge by killing her. And who knows, maybe she'll serve as bait for the dobe, was what the Uchiha planned as he retreated to plan his own move of her. Again with Naruto. Returning to the Vizard lair, We find a very relaxed blonde listening to the story of the wizard attentively. Little by little, as Aizen was mentioned more, the blonde's face darkens while he once again becomes enraged against that individual. In the end, the blonde was once again furious against him. Longing to be able to confront him and teach him a well-deserved lesson, his unconsciously released murderous aura had the Vizards who were looking at him from a safe distance a little scared. Well, all but one. "Lisa, you look very cute when you do that, Naruto-kun," Lisa, the glasses-wearing Vizard, said affectionately while she clung to the blonde. Immediately Naruto reacted, clearing his violent aura and focused on the girl next to him. As soon as he looked at her, he noticed how 2 buttons on her shirt were conveniently unbuttoned while it stuck too much to him. The blonde's eyes unconsciously went to her cleavage while a certain red-haired vixen inside her claimed the girl's blood. The blonde broke away from him a little and proceeded with his little explanation about the killer instinct and other things that a 2,000-year-old ninja has to tell. At the end of the explanation, all the Vizard had a face of not believing anything while the blonde laughed and scratched the back of his neck. Old habits refuse to die. After a very good explanation and a forced and mumbled apology from Hiyori for trying to slice him, the blonde proceeded with the explanation of Ichigo's symptoms that concluded with the clear idea that he would surely become a Vizard with the passage of time, at the end of the day. The blonde was very happy to have new friends and was about to leave when he noticed the girl with glasses, Lisa, reading a book that was too well known to him. "Naruto is sorry, but where did you get that from, Lisa-chan?" the blonde said kindly while the girl smiled at the affectionate suffix. "Lisa, oh, I found this masterpiece in the library of the Soul Society," the smiling girl responded while placing the well-known book against her cheek. "Hiyori, well, more like you stole it," Hiyori said from a distance, annoyed by the attitude of the girl with glasses. "Lisa, stealing, finding is just a matter of semantics. Why do you ask, Naruto-kun? Do you want me to read it to you before we sleep together?" he flirtatiously replied to the blonde. Naruto reached into one of his pockets and pulled out a small scroll that, after performing a couple of signs, exploded into a ball of smoke, drawing the attention of everyone present. "Naruto, that book was written by my teacher, and this is the rest of the collection." The blue-eyed man stepped aside, revealing a small bookcase with 4 shelves all filled with the well-known and infamous Ika book. At first they were a birthday gift from his math teacher, but every time a new edition came out it arrived at his door. That's how he ended up with such a collection, and to be honest, he read them on more than one occasion. I mean, 2,000 years is a long time, don't you think? "Naruto, if you want them I'll give them to you, Lisa-chan. I already have another set." Before the blonde could react, he was already being hugged by the happy and tearful girl. "Lisa, thank you so much, Naruto-kun. Now I owe you a lot. Don't hesitate to ask me whatever you want." "Yes," she said, winning at him before taking the first book and starting to read like crazy. A little further back, the rest of the Vizards watched the whole scene with a giant drop on the back of their necks. On one side, the blonde smiled happily while the girl in the school uniform read the book in her hands. She looked crazy. They all thought the same thing in chorus. "Vizard, those two are very strange," and they weren't entirely wrong. Half an hour later, the blonde was ready to go home, and after saying goodbye to the whole group, he left the Vizard den. "Lisa, Naruto-kun promised me that when I finish my reading you will help me make this beautiful art," the girl told him while the blonde blinked a couple of times before accepting and leaving the lair, leaving behind him some Vizard who were looking again with a drop at the pornography fanatic who was reading like crazy the second book. Outside the Vizard lair. Outside on the street, the sun threatened to set in the distance while the blonde set off for the supermarket since he had run out of milk again. Apparently a certain woman with golden eyes liked the liquid in too much question. He smiled. After all, she was his Nico-chan. He walked calmly but with a doubt in his mind. Naruto, what would Lisa-chan be talking about, was what the immortal blonde said, but then he decided not to give it much importance. He would surely find out sooner or later. He was leaving the supermarket with a liter of milk in his hand and was ready to go home when they collided. In fact, he was still standing, and on the floor was a slender girl with long black hair tied in 2 ponytails covered in some kind of white tape. She cursed under her breath when the blonde bent down to see her. "Naruto, are you okay?" the boy asked him kindly, attracting his attention. She raised her face and bumped into the blonde. To tell the truth, she didn't know why, but Naruto's blue eyes made her blush a little. "Naruto, I'll help you up," the blonde told her and offered her his hand, which she gladly accepted. Now standing, he could better appreciate her slim and stylized body. undoubtedly athletic and surely fast when it came to moving, small in stature no more than 1.50 m with black hair and dark gray eyes. Her rather small breasts, perhaps a B cup that matched her figure perfectly. She wore a pleated skirt down to her knees and a school shirt, a uniform obviously from one of the city's schools. "Yes, I'm fine, thank you," she said somewhat dryly while she wiped the dust off her clothes and began to walk. The blonde sighed and continued on her way. As soon as he turned the corner, the blonde ran into some knocked-down garbage cans, and behind them the same black-haired girl cursing under her breath. He looked behind him and then back at her, having no idea how it was that did that. She approached her and offered him her hand as soon as she got up. She cursed again while the blonde looked at her astonished. "What's so funny?" she said grumpily while the blonde shook his head. "Naruto, it's just that he has some dirt on her cheek." As soon as he said it, he extended his hand of her, and with the back of it he wiped her cheek. The girl's face turned red, perhaps from grief, but more likely from anger. After all, this stranger was daring to touch her without her permission. "Naruto, I'm Naruto, by the way," the blonde said, holding out his hand and with a big smile. "Soi Fong," he replied, shaking his hand at her. "Naruto, and I can know what your problem is?" the blonde asked him with a kind smile on her face. "Soi Fong, and why would I tell you?" she answered, narrowing her eyes a little, distrusting the blonde. "Naruto, if you don't, I can't help you, Soi Fong-chan," the blonde told her with a kind smile, making her blush at the compliment. "Soi Fong, I'm looking for a damn, corrupting pervert," she replied. During the next few minutes, the very outrageous Soi Fong illustrated to the blonde how her beloved mentor was imprinted in the sinister hands of an evil man who was constantly corrupting her both physically and mentally. In the end, the blonde was convinced to help him save her mentor. For the next hour and a half, after managing to convince her, the blonde was guiding her around the city in search of that evil man who simply didn't appear anywhere. The truth is, Soi Fong had no idea what he was like, but she didn't want to admit it. On top of this was the constant feeling of weakness, how she hated being inside a jugai. She felt so weak and vulnerable, not to mention how clumsy on more than one occasion she tripped and was almost touching the ground, but again the blonde was there to hold her and prevent her from falling. Soi Fong, well, the jugai has its advantages of Ella, was what she thought, somewhat blushing, when she was once again in the arms of the blonde who, already a little tired, was at the foot of his building of Ella. How did they get there? The truth is, she had no idea. "Naruto, hey Soi Fong-chan, do you want to have dinner?" the blonde asked her kindly while she looked at him annoyed. "Soi Fong, perhaps you are thinking of bringing me into your house to abuse me," was what she said, narrowing her eyes while the blonde just looked at her impressed. "Naruto, but what things are you saying?" "I'll just invite you to dinner, that's all," he said, smiling at the girl. She denied it, but her stomach didn't agree. She grew loudly and without further ado accepted the invitation. As soon as they opened the door, the aroma of the place flooded the girl's nose. Curious, the aroma seemed familiar to her. Suddenly, in front of the turned-on television, a dark-skinned female figure stood up. "Yorichi, hello Naruto-kun," the golden-eyed girl welcomed him happily. "Naruto, hello Yorichi-chan," welcomed back while her companion froze. "Soi Fong, Yorichi-sama," the girl said in a state of shock while the woman looked at her. "Yorichi, hello Soi Fong. You know Naruto-kun," was what the smiling woman told her while the blonde went into the kitchen to leave the milk. The air became heavy as the captaincy became more and more furious. As the events of the afternoon passed through his head, the blonde entered the scene, and the girl's homicidal look was not a very good indication. Her body fell to the ground. While her spiritual form rose more than annoying, she launched a front kick at the blonde, who dodged it gracefully while she smashed the table behind the blonde. "Naruto, hey, what happened?" the bewildered blonde asked the dark-haired girl. "Soi Fong, you are the damn one who grapes Yorichi-sama every night," she shouted indignantly. Immediately both the blonde and the golden-eyed girl turned red at the mental image. "Naruto, I do and do that. How could you possibly think so?" the blonde replied while Soi Fong's sword was released in that peculiar glove of hers. "Soi Fong, I'm going to castrate you," he shouted into the wind, and the blonde counterattacked with the best technique of his perverted teacher. He ran like crazy. Somewhere else, Ichigo Kurosaki was returning home from the store. A beautiful full moon reigned in the sky when in the distance he swore he saw Naruto running from a furious Soi Fong followed by a worried Yorichi. He blinked a couple of times before shaking his head. Surely I imagine it, and even if it were real, it is not as if that captain was going to kill her immortal master. The blonde jumped across the roofs, evading Soi Fong's deadly thrusts that instead of going to his heart he went to a certain lower region of his body. In the end the blonde found himself cornered by the girl in the park, where Yoruichi landed between the two, hoping to stop his furious student. "Yoruichi, what the hell is wrong with you, Soi Fong?" the woman with golden eyes asked her angrily. "Soi Fong, this guy is abusing you. Let me free you from his yoke, Yoruichi-sama," she responded determinedly while attacking the blonde, who once again jumped to save her life. Somewhere else. In another part of the city, a gorge opened and some white figures emerged, led by a subject with bluish hair and the remains of a wild jaw on his face. Behind him another tall, mini-like individual of 1.98 m height with somewhat pronounced muscles, a bald head and dark blue eyes, carrying a regular katana on his left side, emerged behind him. "You want it for yourself, right?" she said, smiling as the guy moved towards the park. "Yes, do and get involved, Grimjow," he said with his deep voice to the one now known as Grimjow. "Grimjow, don't worry, I'm more interested in the guy who killed Yami." After saying that, they each separated in search of their own opponent. Meanwhile, with Naruto, the blonde was jumping for his life, while Yoruichi just shook her head at Soi Fong's uncontrolled attitude of hers. Suddenly the blonde's eyes changed focus, and to everyone's surprise he hugged the girl, who immediately turned red and dropped to the ground. And over them passed a red pillar of energy. The blonde stood up seriously, offering her hand to the girl he accepted in the presence of a new enemy. "Naruto, who are you?" the blonde asked the trees from which the subject who had been accompanying Grimjow emerged. "You must be Naruto. My name is Trag Shurkei," the man now known as Trag Shurkei said in his deep voice. Chapter 11, Big Brother. Yoruichi joined the other two while the subject stared at the blonde, who looked somewhat thoughtful, until he smiled and remembered clearly. "Naruto, your last name is the same as crap," the blonde told him, while the subject's expression turned dark. "Trag L was my younger brother," he told him with his voice very angry and full of resentment. He vanished with a buzz, and immediately the blonde pushed his two companions away from the area where the attacker landed his unsheathed sword with a long, straight blade about 1.5 meters long with a serrated edge full of small, sharp teeth. Trag stood up, staring at the blonde, who immediately unsheathed a kunai. "Naruto, Yoruichi-chan, you and Soi Fong-chan, stay away, he loves me," the already serious blonde said to the two Shinigami. "Yoruichi, forget it, Naruto-kun. I'm not going to leave you alone with this guy," the woman with golden eyes responded. "Soi Fong, it's true, someone like you can't beat that guy, only Yoruichi-sama could," the dark-eyed girl tortured while the blonde looked at her seriously. "Naruto, it wasn't a question, it was an order," the blonde told them coldly and severely, producing a slight chill in the women, who chose to walk away. Trap just smiled as the Shinigami walked away. He held his sword in front and attacked directly. Sparks flew as the weapons collided with each other. The blonde held off the onslaught of the annoyed-looking man as he walked away from the blonde. Naruto went on the offensive, throwing several shuriken out of nowhere. The man vanished in sound and reappeared in the distance. "Trag, that won't help you," he told him, proud of evading the attack. "Naruto, I know," the blonde told him from behind, while he plunged his kunai into his shoulder. Ichigo was frankly concerned with the subject in front of him. His threatening smile gave him a bad feeling. Without saying anything, he attacked from the front, and the orange-haired man unsheathed his zansa, blocking the frontal thrust. They rose into the air while a deadly game of tag began. Cat and mouse. The blue-haired man's sword moved quickly while Ichigo's, incredibly, despite its size, kept up with him with great ease. Seeing as Zangetsu was much lighter than he remembered, he smiled, apparently the training of the blonde if it was of any use to him. He attacked head-on, and this time it was Grimjow who had to dodge in an attempt to avoid ending up split in two. His smile grew even more. This orange-haired guy was turning out to be a good opponent. Now he understood why Yami died before him, but that clearly didn't happen. What happened to him? He charged at Ichigo, and their swords collided in a shower of sparks. Back with Naruto versus Trap. Trap was again dodging the blonde's shower of shurikens as the latter faded in a golden glow to reappear at his side and hit him with superhuman strength. His body felt almost as if it were being ground from the inside. He moved away a little and threw away a powerful zero that the blonde dodged with great ease. Again he attacked head-on, this time with greater speed, a downward slash that the blonde dodged but not the elbow that stuck in his face. He immediately moved from the area, avoiding the deadly cut. "Naruto, you got even faster in a second," the beaten blonde told him. "Trap, of course I am after all not fighting at full power," the hairless man replied very proudly. Again the blonde blocked a sword blow with his kunai that this time ended up giving way while breaking in two. The sword entered the blonde's chest while the Shinigami's eyes widened in shock. The blonde shined and exploded with force, throwing Trap into the air. He fell to the ground with a heavy thud, and while he got up the blonde approached him at full speed with a bright blue sphere in his hand. "Naruto Rasengan," was what the blonde said as he lifted him into the air with the powerful jutsu, making him spit blood before slamming into the ground again. Among the trees, Soi Fong's eyes were wide open, while Yorichi breathed a sigh of relief, sometimes forgetting how much the blonde liked making those copies. Trap got up, annoyed and a little sore. For a second he felt like the winner. But again that guy managed to escape and counterattack. He got up and charged forward again. The sword moved at great speed, but the blonde matched all his movements. The sword lowered and again the blonde dissipated in that golden glow, while the air whistled. Trap's eyes widened as a shower of glowing, electrified kunai descended upon him, his sword digging into the ground as his hands rose as a 00 rose into the air, erasing all of the blonde's weapons. "Naruto, you have no defense," said the blonde in front of him with his jutsu ready. Again the Rasengan, only this one was white. Yes, it was the futon Rasengan that was stabbing into his stomach, making blood fly while he screamed in pain and flew against the trees. Back with Ichigo versus Grimmjow. Back with Ichigo. He was frankly starting to get scared. That guy named Grimmjow evaded his movements very well and each of his blows was difficult to block, but that huge smile was actually quite intimidating to look at. Right now he was blocking the faces again. Offensive from the blue-haired Urara who was trying to cut him into pieces, the blow was lateral, deflecting Ichigo's sword to the side while his hand pointed at the orange-haired man with a dark blue sphere in it. Grimmjow 0, the blue neighborhood pillar with everything taking Ichigo along. Again with Naruto and Trap. Back at the park, Trap was getting up more than furious. His stomach was hurt, and he had profuse bleeding that threatened his life. In front of him at a good distance was the very serious blonde looking at him with some mercy which only made him boil more than courage. "Trap, I won't be able to beat him in this weak form. It's time to show my true power," was what the man thought as he stood up again. Again with Ichigo and Grimmjow. Grimmjow was officially disappointed. After planning this raid so much and his fight ending so soon, it was a real shame. Suddenly a geyser of bright blue Ryatsu attracted his attention. He moved to the side, dodging the upward slash of dark energy that almost broke him. In front of him stood the slightly battered figure of Ichigo. In the orange-haired man's mind he could only hear the blonde's words. "An enemy will have no regard for you. You must be ready for all kinds of dirty tricks." The orange-haired man sighed a little and settled into a combat position. "Grimmjow, you still want more," he said arrogantly while Ichigo remained silent. He attacked head-on with a frontal sword blow that Grimmjow could barely avoid. He moved quickly, settling behind Ichigo ready to finish him off. The substitute Shinigami turned quickly and threw his sword into the air, holding it by the bandage. He pulled it hard and his large Zanbato became into a gigantic fan that cut the air around before pulling it back into Ichigo's hand. He held it firmly and attacked head-on while the blue-haired Arankar stopped his attack with that fierce smile on his face. "Grimmjow, now you're serious about fighting," he said before pushing the frowning boy. Back with Naruto and Trap. Trap held his sword tightly pointing forward while smiling arrogantly at what he was about to do. He held the weapon with both hands while turning the tip of the blade towards him and shouted into the wind. Grimmjow said sudden short. Plung, and his body glowed red as he exploded with force. The Shinigami looked very attentively as the new figure stood among the smoke. It must now be about 4 meters tall. His musculature looked exaggerated with a large number 10 above the hole in the center of his chest. Its long arms of him ended in 2 enormous reddish pincers while its lower region had been replaced by an animal base with 4 long bone legs and behind it a long segmented tail that dragged over the ground for about 5 meters. On its head the bone crest was lengthened until it covered both of his eyebrows and ended with pronounced antennae that surrounded his head. Everyone remained silent in the face of such a scene until the blonde spoke. Naruto, you know you look like a giant lobster, the blonde said, scratching his head a little. Naruto, and what the heck is that? 10. The confused blonde questioned him. Grimmjow, nothing that interests you, human, and then I attack head on. The blonde suddenly found himself flying through the air, a victim of the powerful frontal blow. To tell the truth, he barely managed to see a blur when he attacked. Right now he felt his entire body somewhat numb while the ground rumbled before the enemy's advance. The blonde was fast. He avoided another blow, but as soon as he landed on the ground the subject's new tail hit him sideways, sending him breaking several trees. Grimmjow, ha ha ha, that's what you deserve for messing with a sword, ha 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 ha, he laughed, sure of his victory. In their own tree the two Shinigami gave each other looks of understanding. They were ready to come to the aid of the blonde immortal when the geyser of bright blue chakra and Naruto's increase in power became present. From among the trees the blue-eyed man emerged, surrounded by an aura of power that faded in his wake. Trap smiled even more as he faced the blonde ninja. In a golden flash the blonde disappeared and hit the huge errand car with a powerful kick that threw him to the ground. The furious Trap immediately sat up. Attacked vehemently, his enormous pincers moved from one side to the other, lifting the ground while the blonde danced with ease, dodging his blows. Soi Fong, it's incredible. He's as fast as Yorichi-sama, was what Soi Fong thought while the blonde crouched down, avoiding a pinch. Holding the large limb and pulling over his shoulder, the large starter rose into the air before being thrown against the trees that gave way due to the force of the impulse on his part. Yorichi watched the fight fascinated. She had already seen him fight before, but this time he was limiting himself to physical attacks. Trap, you're a bastard, the furious lobster roared at him, while his large tail whipped the ground hard, lifting rocks to throw at the blonde, who once again just dodged them. Naruto, you are stronger than crap, I won't deny it, but you are too clumsy, the blonde told him, and then disappeared again, and this time kneed the guy in the nose. The blonde fell to the ground, and with a quick turn he swept away the legs of Thirar, who fell to the left side. The blonde performed a strange maneuver and stuck his ankles in the ribs of the Grey Terror, who spat out blood. The blonde, he jumped away from him, while he again got up with a huge vein pricking in his head. Naruto, this one is even more resistant than the crab. That would have broken the other's back, was what the blonde thought while Trap's pincers glowed red. Trap 000 was the subject's cry while his pincers opened next to his mouth, launching 3 huge red pillars that took the blonde off guard. They roared powerfully while they swept the ground and everything in their path, completely enveloping the blonde. Yorichi, Naruto Kun, was the cry of the frightened Yorichi. Again with Ichigo. Ichigo was very surprised. Despite his new speed and performance, he was still very far from the power of the guy who was once again sweeping the floor with him. That was when he passed that crazy laugh in the depths of his mind just before hearing his evil voice. What's happening, King? They're beating you up. Let me show you how to fight, the crazy voice in his head, he told him. Grimmjow was somewhat confused with what he was looking at. Suddenly his opponent had stood still and was now holding his head while swinging it uncontrollably from side to side. He suddenly stopped and began to laugh evilly, and then raised his face. Half of it was covered by a white mask with black lines while his now yellow eyes shone with evil. Ichigo, I'm going to kill you, was what the orange-haired man said with a distorted voice. Right now Grimmjow was jumping and dodging for his life while the half-masked Ichigo's outrageous laughter echoed in the blackness of the night. His clothes were torn while blood flowed from the cut on his torso, from all over his chest, and he felt the not very deep wound caused by the smiling orange-haired man. Seeing him like that under the moonlight was chilling, although he wouldn't admit it. Ichigo, you'll die, ha ha ha, Ichigo laughed madly. Ichigo, you will not have my body, was what the firm voice of the real Ichigo said while he fought for the domino. Again he swung from all sides until with a single pull he tore off the mask that was already beginning to form even more on his face and tore it to pieces, letting the night breeze carry away the remains of it. He breathed tiredly while Grimmjow got ready to finish him off. A throat opened behind the man in question and a well-known black-haired subject appeared. Ichigo, is what Ichigo thought, breaking out in a cold sweat. If those two fought together he would not survive this fight. Grimmjow, you were ordered not to come, was what he said with his emotionless voice. Grimmjow, shut up, Ulquiorra. Don't you see that I'm about to kill him? The blue-haired guy responded to the man already known as Ulquiorra. Ulquiorra, that doesn't matter. Aizen-sama calls us, he responded with his big green eyes devoid of feelings. Grimmjow, damn well, it seems they saved you. We'll see you later, Ichigo, Grimmjow told him as he entered the gorge. Ulquiorra, where is Trap? Ulquiorra asked him with that cold voice characteristic of him. Grimmjow the fool went to look for the guy who killed his brother, Grimmjow responded, downplaying it. Ulquiorra, I see, and then the throat closed while Ichigo looked at the night sky. Ichigo, Ulquiorra, that guy will definitely be a problem. Guess what the orange-haired Shinigami thought. Back with Naruto. Smoke and debris settled as Trap's laughter echoed everywhere, Yoruichi's furious figure landing ready to kill him, accompanied by an equally annoyed Soi Fong. Trap, who passes Shinigami mate to her boyfriend, he told them mockingly while the gray-eyed girl blushed a little. Yoruichi, I'm going to tear you to pieces for hurting Naruto-kun, the golden-eyed woman told her, ready to fight. A cough was heard from the dust, and a smiling blonde was immediately revealed behind the rubble of a rock wall. The blonde was somewhat dirty, but with a big smile on her face while he stared at the subject. Naruto, a little more, and that hurts me, was what the smiling blonde said while Trap charged furiously. Trap, why don't you die? He said furiously, running to the blonde, throwing punches left and right. Yoruichi sighed in relief, and amazingly so did Soi Fong. Further away, the blonde moved from side to side, making the great Erlencar more and more desperate, the blonde's hand glowing blue before the sphere turned into a screeching electric sphere. Naruto, right on. Rasengan was what the blonde said and nailed it into Trap's shoulder. Blood flew everywhere before the detonation of electricity that destroyed Theorar's shoulder before leaving him lying on the ground. Naruto, you should know that you can't kill an immortal, the confident blonde told him. Trap, maybe, but I can kill them, was what he said, wielding his last pliers in the direction of the girls. Trap, zero, was what the injured opponent said. Immediately the energy flew against the Shinigami, who were ready to elude him when the blonde's figure stood in the way of the attack. A powerful explosion shook the place. The dust flew, and the smiling Trap assumed to kill at least one of them. The dust settled, revealing the chakra-covered figure of the blonde with his red eyes and more pronounced lines on his face. He turned to the Shinigami, and then spoke. Naruto, are you okay? He asked them with his thick, demonic voice. Yoruichi, yes, Yoruichi responded, somewhat disturbed with not very holy thoughts in her head. Deella related to her, Deella and the blonde, a bed, and the blonde saying, "Per my sweet kitty." Yoruichi, damn Kisuk, his perversion already rubbed off on me, was what the somewhat red-eyed girl thought. On her side, Deella. Her student Deella was redder than her, Deella with very suggestive ideas related to her. Deella, Yoruichi-sama caressing him while the blonde was doing a certain thing to her, and she was moaning for more of her sting. Her? Naruto? Sama of her? Soi Fong, he corrupted my mind, I'm going to castrate him, was what the offended captain thought. The blonde turned to the annoyed Erlencar, who was ranting about why the hell they didn't die. Inside the blonde, a certain vixen had her eyes closed, feeling her power run through the blonde with a single idea in her head. "Kyubi, Naruto-kun, let me out and let's play." A lot next to him, a white-haired swordswoman lay with some blood coming out of her nose while she rambled on about scenarios less suitable for minors than those of the two Shinigamis. In short, they were a pair of hopeless perverts. Naruto, you dared to want to hurt Yoruichi-chan and Soi Fong-chan, the blonde told him while the demonic chakra around him dissipated. A small explosion of smoke revealed a black katana at his side that looked plain and simple sight, but as soon as she saw it, Yoruichi's eyes widened. Yoruichi, that's a Zanpakuto, was what he thought without being able to believe what the blonde had next to him. Naruto took the handle and unsheathed the weapon that was in fact a normal katana. He pointed in front and looked at the Erlencar intently. Naruto Teki no Saimai o Hikasaku, tear the life from the enemy, Kuraishi, dark death, and the shadows beneath the blonde rose like a veil. They dissipated immediately, revealing Naruto wielding a sword very different from the original. The blade was completely silver with a black edge and the smooth handle with a red ribbon with the kanjis for 9 and death around it. From the blonde, the air felt cold and thick as the blade shone eerily under the moonlight. Trap's mouth opened and the red zero flew against the blonde, who only swung his sword horizontally while he attacked. Naruto sure knows Sakibi, death screamed. The blade moved quickly, leaving a thin black line in the air. It advanced against the zero, while a soft and eerie scream resonated in the air. Amazingly, the zero was cut to pieces. Half while the wave went vertical and cut him in half. Trap he screamed with all his strength while his body was torn apart in a single blow. Everyone who managed to feel the level of that attack had the same idea that it had been on par with Captain Yamamoto's Ryatsu. Kuraishi returned to normal, and was sheathed while the smiling blonde turned to the Shinigamis. Yoruichi, but how powerful are you, Naruto-kun? Was what Yoruichi thought, full of curiosity. Chapter 12 Home Sweet Home. The Shinigamis quickly arrived at the park, finding a devastating scene of fallen trees, raised earth, some burnt grass, and the remains of an errand car that were finally dissipating in the wind. To tell the truth, everyone noticed the increase in the enemy's power and felt worried for the safety of whoever fought him. They were extremely surprised when that other power was felt. To tell the truth, it was colossal, on a pair with that of old Yamamoto, if not greater, and now in this place they came across the blonde accompanied by Yoruichi and Soi Fong. Ichigo, Yoruichi-san, did you finish off that errand car? The tired Ichigo asked. The aforementioned shook her head and all eyes fell on the thin captain, who also denied the group's conclusions, making everyone turn to the smiling blonde who was already waiting for their attention. It has to be a joke. You killed him, was what the incredulous red-haired man with the fanged sword said. Yoruichi, yes, it was Naruto-kun who finished him, said the smiling golden-eyed girl, while everyone looked at the blonde in disbelief. Hitsugaya, how is that possible? I'm sure that what we felt was the power of a Zanpakuto, was what the white-haired man said seriously and thoughtfully. Naruto, that was Kuraishi, my sword, the blonde said without giving it much importance. Immediately the rain of questions bombarded him, while he sighed and answered everything with the truth. Well, almost everything. There were some things that were not going against them for now, although later he was not sure. When he had full confidence in them, he would tell them all the truth. Matsumoto, I knew you were powerful, Naruto-kun, said the cheerful orange-haired woman, hugging him while she clung to him quite a bit. Immediately jealousy invaded a certain golden-eyed girl who began to have fantasies of her murdering a certain blonde with great attributes. At her side her dear student also had similar feelings, which only confused her more than she already was. Soi Fong, that blonde doesn't have to get so close to him. What the hell is wrong with me? Why I get like that? Am I jealous? Immediately her furious face focused on poor blue-eyed boy. Soi Fong, Naruto, I'm going to castrate you for cooperating, Yoruichi-sama and me. The blonde broke free from Matsumoto, politely kissing her hand and starting to run to save his manhood from the furious Soi Fong. Everyone had a cold sweat on their necks at the curious scene, while Yoruichi smiled internally. Yoruichi, there is Soi Fong. You already fell too, he. It seems like you are a Casanova, Naruto-kun, and laughed at the situation from a distance. Already at night. The night was somewhat advanced, and a certain woman with golden eyes accompanied her student in search of a good hotel to rest. As soon as the blonde offered his house, the girl with gray eyes became a traffic sign before the ideas that paraded through her head while her teacher smiled and sighed. Apparently the blonde was oblivious to what he provoked in some women, and that was quite funny. In the end he agreed to accompany the girl with bandaged pigtails in her search for accommodation. Yoruichi, hey Soi Fong, I wanted to ask you something and I want you to answer me truthfully, the dark-skinned woman said seriously. Soi Fong, of course I will tell you the truth, Yoruichi-sama, the young captain responded. Yoruichi, tell me, do you like Naruto-kun? The golden-eyed girl asked with a big smile on her face while the girl turned red like a tomato. Soi Fong, what things are you saying, Yoruichi-sama, she said, avoiding eye contact. Yoruichi, I knew it, if you like it. Ha 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 ha, don't worry, you have good taste, I know, ha ha ha, she laughed very scandalously while the girl turned even redder. Soi Fong, why do I have to like Naruto-sama? Naruto-sama? She thought, somewhat disturbed before finally reacting. Soi Fong and pulled her hair while the golden-eyed girl laughed. With Naruto. Back at the blonde's house, he was comfortably lying in bed still meditating on his fight. That guy named himself a sword and wore the number 10 on his chest, which meant that there had to be at least 9 others and they were surely stronger. And that made him feel like if a war was approaching again. Naruto, this time the world will not pay the price. I do and know how, but I have to defeat you, Aizen, the blonde thought, determined not to see the world die again. Her eyes opened when he felt the weight on him. It was the red-haired fox who was currently wearing a cream-colored kimono that was half open, revealing a bit of her smooth, white skin while she stared at the blonde who was turning a little red because of the way the redhead was. "Kyubi Naruto-kun," she purred as she leaned on the blonde and kissed him sweetly. "Naruto-Q-chan, what are you doing?" the blonde said while the fox took off her shirt. "Kyubi, I want to feel close to my partner, that's all, Naruto-kun," she responded with a sweet look in her eyes. "Naruto-Q-chan," the blonde told her, as she began to rub herself on the blonde while her shirt flew off. "Kyubi, make me yours, Naruto-kun," the fox told him with desire in her voice, and the blonde just smiled at her. "Naruto, always, Q-chan, always," the blonde replied. They turned around on the bed and the blonde was on top of the vixen. He gently opened her kimono, revealing Kyubi's clear body with her firm breasts and large pink nipples swaying to the rhythm of her breathing. Below a flat stomach and a little reddish hair between her shapely legs, the blonde smiled a little and the vixen blushed slightly. "Naruto, you do ain't wear underwear. Ha, my little slut is bad, right?" and her blonde leaned over her. He kissed her lips with passion, while his tongue invaded Kyubi's mouth. Their tongues collided in a fierce dance that the blonde won, while the vixen submitted. He gently kissed Kyubi's lobes and she moaned happily while the blonde's lips went down her neck, filling her with kisses. He reached her breasts and gently kissed each of them. Licked in circles until he reached the hard nipples and began nibbling them gently to make them even harder. He blew gently on them and Kyubi's back arched. He opened his lips and kissed the first one. "Kyubi on Naruto-kun," the vixen moaned while the blue-eyed boy gently sucked her left nipple, his fingers meanwhile playing with the right one, gently caressing it. The blonde detached himself from the left breast and then went to the other breast, holding on to the nipple while he lovingly sucked the invisible liquid from the kitsune's breasts. For her part, the vixen felt herself rising under the blonde's caresses. She abandoned the wet breasts, and he went down her flat belly, kissing her navel and playing a little. She moaned even louder. The blonde then reached her crotch and gently kissed the wet entrance. The blonde's lips kissed softly while her tongue made its way into the flesh of the redhead. Her moist and juicy interior had an indescribable flavor comparable only to another that the blonde had tasted so long ago. But it was the past, and locking himself in would be bad after all. The beautiful girl with pearly eyes wanted him to move on. The blonde continued with her work on Ella while Kyubi moaned happily. The button surfaced and the blonde caressed it with her fingers while her tongue ran through the inside of the slut. The walls narrowed and a violent orgasm suddenly came. "Kyubi, I'm coming," the redhead moaned with pleasure, while her warm fluids and sweet juices ended up in her blonde's mouth. The blonde sat on the bed while the redhead was breathing somewhat agitatedly. The bed moved and the blonde opened his eyes to see Kyubi stripping off her pants. "Kyubi, we're not done yet, Naruto-kun," said the smiling redhead, while the blonde's member jumped anxiously in front of her face. It was fully erect and ready to fight. "Kyubi, you don't know how much I miss you, Penis-kun," said the playful redhead, while her tongue licked the member along its entire length. Soon the blonde's penis was shiny and covered in the redhead's saliva. Her lips opened and wrapped around the head of the penis. "Naruto-Aku-chan," the blonde moaned as she swallowed more of her member. Soon the lucky penis was completely inside the kitsune's mouth, which moved up and down, letting wet sounds come out of her mouth while she was literally penetrated by the mouth. The blonde felt an ecstasy. To tell the truth, she was very good at doing that. Her tongue played with the head while her cheeks sucked hard. It was a deadly caress that the blonde couldn't stand. "Naruto Kyu-chan ahhhhh," the blonde moaned when a generous discharge flooded her bitch's mouth, which she swallowed very happily. In the end, the shiny, clean member still looked ready to fight, while the bitch tasted the taste of the blonde. "Kyubi, much as always, Naruto-kun. I'm surprised we haven't had children until now. If I didn't take care of myself, I would have already given birth to at least 20. Don't worry, Naruto-kun, I'll wait until you're ready, then I'll give you all the children you deserve," thought the redhead. The blonde pushed her on the bed while he settled on her. Kyubi's legs opened and the blonde's member entered. Both moaned happily as the blonde's man entered hood more and more into her. Soon he was pushing against her womb. She stepped back and he advanced again in a rhythmic swing while their bodies were covered in sweat. The aroma of Hex filled the bedroom while the bed creaked before the blonde's thrusts. The moans became intense while the bitch's womb gave way and the blonde's penis invaded his, being hers. "Kyubi aha," the red-headed bitch moaned when the blonde's penis reached the bottom. The act became intense while the orgasm approached quickly and unstoppably. "Kyubi. Naruto." They moaned at the same time as the orgasm came. It was intense and violent. The blonde discharged a generous amount of semen inside the slut. Kyubi's eyes were almost white when the blonde came out of her, letting a little of the white substance come out of her. The fox was exhausted while the blonde was smiling. She was about to lie down when she heard it. It was muffled sounds as if someone was crying. She put on some pants and left the bedroom and saw there in the living room was the woman with golden eyes with tears in her eyes. Her face of her. Naruto Yoruichi-chan? Said the blonde while she looked at him sadly. Yoruichi her, you love her right, don't worry, I won't interfere. Naruto-kun sniff she answered tearfully. To tell the truth she felt humiliated, she never cried for something like that, but right now her heart hurts too much. Naruto, please do not cry, the blonde told her while he knelt in front of her and lifted her face with her fingers. Naruto, such a beautiful woman should not cry for anyone, he told her with that confident smile on his face. She couldn't stand it anymore, and Yoruichi threw herself into the blonde's arms and kissed him with great passion. The blonde was frankly surprised, but he immediately returned the kiss to the surprise of the dark-skinned woman, who soon found herself hugging the blonde. Naruto Yoruichi-chan, said the blonde looking at her intently. Yoruichi, I love you. Naruto-kun, let me prove it this time. She dragged him to the couch. Immediately the blonde found himself naked with the purple-haired girl's astonished gaze fixed on his crotch. His member once again stood proudly in all its splendor. The woman's mouth approached the blonde's member and licked it happily. Little by little Naruto's head rested on the back of the couch while she did a diligent job. Her tongue went back and forth up and down, while the blonde's penis began to look shiny covered in saliva. She stood up and took off her clothes, remaining naked. Her beautiful body with curves similar to those of Kyubi looked very beautiful in its splendor, while her nipples a little lighter than her skin stuck to the blonde. Yoruichi, give me my milk. Naruto-kun, the purple-haired girl told him with her voice loaded with a lot of desire. She let herself fall on the blonde, receiving the onslaught of the member. Yoruichi's folds opened very slowly. The moans were not long in coming while she herself surrounded the blonde, who was lost in the pleasure of this beautiful woman. The blonde's hands surrounded her waist, and his face went to the breasts of the woman with golden eyes. He kissed them sweetly while he took command of the act that was now beginning to become even more intense. Soon the moans resonated throughout the room while the golden-eyed woman's womb opened, giving way to the blonde's penis. Yoruichi, ah, so deep, you are so deep. Naruto-kun was what she thought, immersed in moans while the blonde thrust much harder. Yoruichi moaned intensely while the blonde unloaded inside her as if there were no tomorrow. Naruto. Yoruichi. They both said before falling asleep in the living room, the clear fluid dripping from the woman's crotch of Ella, who at this moment was happier than ever. Suddenly the blonde stood up with her in his arms and began to walk to the room. Yoruichi, Naruto-kun? She said a little doubtful, looking at the blonde in her face. Naruto, let's go to bed, my beautiful kitten, the blonde told her, and she blushed, and then didn't say anything else. Already in the room, the fox, still on the bed, looked at everything with a slight smile on his face. Yoruichi was placed on the soft mattress and avoided eye contact with the naked fox. Kyubi, Naruto-kun, she doesn't want to see me, the fox told him, complaining like a little girl. Naruto, what do you want Q-chan to do? The blonde replied. Kyubi, make love to me on her, the redhead told him, very determined. Before Yoruichi could say anything, the vixen was already on top of her, moaning pleasantly while the blonde gently rammed her, their nipples rubbing together so hard that the vixen's ecstatic face was all Yoruichi could look at. For a second she thought about running away, but suddenly the blonde's member entered her. She moaned loudly and Kyubi took the opportunity to kiss her, their tongues playing while the blonde gently rammed into the former captain. Kyubi, welcome to the family, Yoruichi-chan, the smiling vixen told her before being penetrated again. For the next few minutes the blonde went from one to the other, gently entering and leaving both of them. Right now his member was rubbing hard against the hard buttons, sliding between both women who did not stop moaning. The movements were fierce and violent, already indicating the closeness of a violent orgasm. Yoruichi/Kyubi, Naruto-kun/Naruto-kun, they moaned at the same time. Naruto, my himes, answered the blonde. The three of them moaned loudly as the blonde bathed the two women in semen, who spilled their fluids in a hot orgasm that saturated the room with the aroma of hex. The bed sheets were balled up in a corner, and under a thin, clean sheet the blonde slept naked, hugged by the two girls. The redhead got up a little and smiled at the sleeping golden-eyed girl. Kyubi, you already need fewer girls for our family, and Naruto-kun thought the redhead before falling asleep. For his part, the blonde boy looked very discreetly at the beautiful full moon in the night sky through the window, remembering a certain girl with blue hair. Naruto, I wish you were with us, Hinata-chan, so we would all be very happy, and without further ado he slept. In the Soul Society, a certain old captain was reading a book of military strategies while he patiently waited for his assignment. In fact, this was the fourth book he had read, and it seemed that his expectation had no end in sight. I wonder why Captain Soi Fong took so long, the leader of the Shinigami murmured in a low voice. Back in the city, a cheerful Soi Fong walked towards the blonde man's residence where she could find a certain woman with golden eyes, and although she didn't want to recognize a certain man with blue eyes, she knocked softly on the door and no one answered. That's when she entered stealthily. There was a strange smell in the air that for some reason made her feel uncomfortable, perhaps eager, and even excited. Her curiosity led her to the bedroom, and she froze there. Under the sheets was a naked Naruto sleeping comfortably, hugging two naked women, one of them Yorichi. The spiritual pressure reached the limit, waking up the trio. Kyubi immediately said goodbye, vanishing in smoke and returning inside the blonde, who hurriedly put on some pants and left the house with a shirt in hand. Seconds later the door flew into hundreds of pieces when the furious Soi Fong came out. Soi Fong, I'm going to kill you, Naruto, was what she shouted to the wind before chasing the blonde. To tell the truth, Yorichi was very strangely happy. She never thought about participating in a threesome, but to be honest, she liked the experience and would love to repeat it. In the distance, Soi Fong's curses and the blonde's pleas faded away while she comfortably drank a cup of coffee. Yorichi, I wonder what bothers Soi Fong more, the trio or the fact that she wasn't included, was what she said with a smile on her face. With Naruto and the furious Soi Fong back with the blonde, this shirt in hand was waiting in the park for the furious woman. He wouldn't say it, but at this moment he would prefer to face Madara alone again and his army of Zetsus and the Jubi all together than this woman. Barely he could evade their attacks, and the increasing spiritual pressure did not help at all. Suddenly the sky cracked while gigantic gorges opened and 5 enormous beings known as Jillians slowly emerged. Unfortunately for one of them, Soi Fong focused his anger on him, and he broke it with one blow. Everyone had a huge drop on the back of their necks. Naruto, mental note, don't make Soi Fong-chan angry ever, the blonde said to himself. The gigantic creatures began a crude attempt to crush them, but their greater speed allowed them to easily elude them. In fact, to be honest, the blonde was limited to eluding them and the woman, who still seemed to want to kill him. The mouth of one of them opened and the huge Zero made an appearance, the red energy of the neighborhood with everything in its path, while the blonde did what he could to prevent it from damaging the city from a distance. Several rock dragons and a couple of wind jutsus solved that, but suddenly one of the giants caught Soi Fong off guard, trapping her. To tell the truth, her own anger made her careless, and she pulled her into her mouth with the clear intention of devouring her. Naruto, Soi Fong shouted the blonde when he ran to her aid. It was a brutal right hand straight to the center of the giant's head, and he stumbled backwards while another throat opened behind him. He fell heavily on his back, but at the last second his gigantic hand caught the blonde, taking him with him, his eyes incredulous. Soi Fong watched as the gorge closed behind her, leaving the blonde in a wild world. Soi Fong, Naruto, she screamed into the wind, but it was too late, her throat had closed. The Jillian's body slowly disintegrated, releasing the blonde who, after dusting off her clothes, looked around. It looked like a kind of forest full of gigantic trees, petrified. Among the shadows the masked creatures watched him hungrily, waiting for the moment to attack. Naruto, well, where the hell am I now? The blonde said to the wind without really understanding where he was. After all, it was the first time I visited Hollow World. Chapter 13, A Wild World. She was kneeling on the ground looking at the crushed grass. Just a couple of seconds ago she had been on the verge of being eaten by a Jillian, and then being saved by that clumsy blonde who was caught and dragged into the hostile world of the Hollows. The chances of finding him were minimal, if anything. Right now Soi Fong's heart was screaming with pain and guilt. Ella's mission was to bring the blonde to Commander Yamamoto, not to make sure she died. For the first time in years, the girl's gray eyes filled with tears and she silently began to cry. Soi Fong, forgive me, Naruto-kun, she said softly to the wind, while her tears wet the ground. Yorichi, Soi Fong, what happened? The woman with golden eyes asked her, suddenly arriving at the combat area. Immediately, the black-haired girl hugged her and cried like in her younger days. Yoruichi's heart trembled. She knew her very well, and this was something she never did. Around her, the somewhat battered park showed signs of a great fight. As the great concentration of Hollow Ryatsu, his eyes opened when he noticed the blonde's absence. Little by little the other Shinigami appeared accompanied by the Ryoka who followed the orange-haired man already in his spiritual form. Everyone was crouched watching Soi Fong cry that it couldn't be anything good. Yoruichi Soi Fong, where is Naruto-kun? The dark-skinned woman asked worriedly. Soi Fong, he is dead, the girl said in response. Everyone fell into disbelief at what they were hearing. For their part, the Shinigamis refused to believe that the blonde who defeated two Arankar alone with an energy comparable to that of their supreme captain was defeated by a bunch of Jillian. For their part, Oriheim was being held by the boy with glasses Ishida since she had just fainted. Matsumoto stared into space while fine tears formed in her eyes. The white-haired captain looked at her seriously, ready to comfort her. Because they worry so much, Naruto-sensei is not supposed to be immortal, said the huge Chad, making everyone react. Yoruichi, it's true, I forgot that he doesn't die from anything, said the purple-haired girl, relieved to remember that detail. Ichigo worries this me, the orange-haired man said seriously, attracting everyone's gaze. Rukia, what do you mean, Ichigo? The thin black-haired girl asked. Ichigo is alive, but he is in the world of hollows. I don't care about them. The problem is Aizen and his army, he told him, strangely calm. Without a doubt the blonde's training was paying off. Renji, in that case we just have to go for him. I don't see what the problem is, said the redhead, dismissing the matter. Ichigo, and how will you open a portal there? Renji, the aforementioned, remained silent regarding the orange-haired man's question. Alive or not, that didn't help much, since right now the blonde was exposed to a possible confrontation against an army of unknown dimensions. The good thing was that the blonde knew well how to deal with such situations. After all, destroying an immense enemy army in the days of war had its useful meaning. Ichigo Urahara, the orange-haired man murmured again, making everyone look at him. What are you talking about, Kurosaki? The white-haired captain asked the boy with the furrowed brow. Ichigo, if Urahara could send us to the Soul Society to save Rukia, he could help us with this. We just need another portal. It shouldn't be that difficult, he said, slightly shrugging his shoulders. Yoruichi. It's true, you have to go with Kasuke immediately, said the golden-eyed girl, who immediately set out on the march to the hatted man's tent, followed by the battalion of Shinigami. In the hollow world, a half-human, half-boar being ran after the blonde, who was sighing somewhat annoyed. The beast charged head-on, and the blue-eyed man held it easily. The snorts echoed in the immense forest while their paws sank into the sand in a vain attempt to pierce the beast. Blonde. Naruto, you didn't learn anything from the others, right? The blonde told him before accumulating chakra in his hand with great ease. The creature's mask shattered and fell to the ground dead just before beginning to disintegrate. Behind the blonde, a large lump of no less than 15 similar beings disintegrated. They attacked him in a group trying to eat him, but the blonde handled them easily with taijutsu and a couple of kunai. In the end they all ended up dead. He was quite disoriented. He knew the land very well and could tell that this place had nothing to do with it. Everything was so gloomy and dark, and the hollow rain moving in the shadows in search of food. Surely that Jillian dragged him with him before disappearing, as Yoruichi had said that place was called. Yes, Hueco Mundo. He walked serenely through the forest of immense petrified trees. The moans resonated, and immediately the few hollows in the area fled scared. From among the trees a group of slow and serene Jillian appeared, swinging clumsily between them. Immediately the blonde ran from the area. The last thing he needed was a bunch of giant hollows trying to eat him. With Aizen. At night Aizen was in full audience with the always smiling Jin, who was currently giving reports on the activity of the Shinigami in the Soul Society. The doors opened and a smiling Sasuke walked in with that arrogant air so characteristic of him. He didn't even greet the man with the creepy smile. He focused directly on Aizen. Aizen, what brings you here, Sasuke-kun? The serene former Shinigami said to him, drinking some tea. Sasuke, I came to report something, the emo Avenger told him with his voice full of venom. Jin's eyebrows raised. This was going to be good. Aizen, no information, and about that, my dear rider. The Uchiha swallowed his anger. How he hated when this guy called them that. Sasuke, they are going to betray us, he told him dry and direct, making the man disappear his confident smile, taking on a serious and cold air. Aizen who? I questioned, annoyed by the younger Uchiha's words of him. Sasuke the third sword, he told him, and Jin immediately began to laugh at the information. Jin Halibel? Please, she is one of the most loyal because she would betray Aizen Taicho, she said, trying to contain her scandalous laughter. Sasuke the bitch is in love, the vengeful emo told him dryly before beginning his story, somewhat altered of course. Aizen, I see, in that case we have no choice but to eliminate it. It's a shame it will be the second time that I will need a third sword, but what are you going to do, said the brunette, drinking his tea again. To tell the truth, his coldness for these topics, it was somewhat disturbing. Jin, what will happen to your faction? The white-haired man asked his calm and smiling leader. Aizen, obviously they must be eliminated, he said, smiling, making the Shinigami with the foxy smile lengthen it even more. Sasuke, I'll take care of it, said the serious emo, receiving a feeling from the former Shinigami. Sasuke left the room, heading to Halibel's domain. Now with Aizen's authorization he could use her, and if it went well it would be the perfect bait to attract Naruto. A dark smile adorned his face as his footsteps echoed through the great corridors of the night. In her enclosure, Halibel was reading a book serenely while for a change her faction was fighting again, far from knowing that they would soon face their death. Back with the blonde, Naruto was now walking through a huge desert. To tell the truth, he felt a great relief when he left that forest, but because he was running like crazy he didn't realize when he left until he saw himself surrounded by sand. Right now he was walking calmly under a large full moon that looked too close to the ground. Again its color and shape reminded him of someone's eyes. Suddenly a gigantic shadow in the shape of a bird covered him. The silhouette descended quickly and landed in front of him. It looked like a kind of vulture with long black feathers and large claws on its legs. On its head a white skull with a large, slightly pointed beak. "Hello, human?" said the creature with a raspy and sinister voice. "Naruto." "Hello," the blonde responded somewhat doubtfully to the strange being's greeting. "It's rare to find a human here, but it's a unique opportunity," he said with his evil eyes shining while some saliva dripped from his beak. The blonde dodged the frontal attack while the beast's claws sank into the sand. Her eyes searched everywhere for the blonde without finding him anywhere. In the air the blonde was already descending, sphere in hand. Naruto Rasengan and the hollow looked at the bright sphere. He had no time to react when it buried itself in his back and sank him into a crater in the sand. "Naruto, you only think about eating me," the blonde said reluctantly as he began to walk away. The sand flew through the air as the vulture creature stood up again with a furious look on its face. It immediately took flight away from the blonde, who was only looking at it confused. It immediately dived at dizzying speed. The blonde dodged the attack. Immediately the movement was repeated while the skilled hollow bird attacked without stopping. It stopped in the air when a couple of cuts appeared on the blue-eyed man's shirt. "Naruto, I don't know what the hell that attack was, but as long as you don't get close to me you won't be able to beat me," he said confidently, and flying over the blonde who was already tracing the seals. Naruto Futon. Tatsumaki no Jutsu Wind Release. Tornado Jutsu. The blonde turned on the ground and immediately unleashed the attack. A powerful tornado hit the area with a furious wind, trapping the hollow bird that screamed in pain while the thin blades filled it with cuts on its body. The gale stopped, and it fell heavily to the ground between moans of pain. It cast a furious look at the smiling blonde who looked at him, crossed his arms and serene. "Naruto, it seems like flying isn't much of an advantage, don't you think?" told him, very sure of his abilities. Anger flooded the vulture's mind. Opening his beak in a display of power, he threw a large, red zero at the blonde, the desert floor. It opened before the attack, the sand moving as the blonde raised a wall of rock. The powerful explosion shook the place, attracting the attention of some hollows that stood out from the sand. From the smoke the silhouette of the blonde could be seen before the hollows' incredulous gaze. "Hollow, it can't be how he survived," he said, scared and regretful of having attacked. The electricity buzzed and a powerful lightning bolt furrowed the air and electrocuted the being that between screams of agony fell to the ground dead. Immediately his mask crashed before disintegrating. The blonde looked serenely at the figure that was fading. Behind him the guttural sounds caught his attention. A huge number of creatures of all shapes and sizes looked at the blonde like the last glass of water in the desert. A drop slid down his neck as dozens of hungry mouths opened, salivating. Naruto, well, come on at once, the blonde told them, entering into a fighting position. Back on land, the group that had just boarded Urahara's tent spoke without any order, only making incomprehensible noises. Soi Fong shut up. The irritated blue-haired girl barked at them, and immediately everyone remained very quiet, followed by an explanation about the situation of the blonde who was currently wandering and fighting in the sands of the hollow world. The man with the hat covered himself with his fan. And they want me to open a throat, he told them, hiding behind his fan. Yes, Matsumoto, Yorichi, Soi Fong and Orihime said in chorus. In a low voice, Renji cursed the blonde's luck. Oh, women in love, ha ha ha, Kug. The hatted man stopped laughing when Soi Fong grabbed him by the neck. Soi Fong, stop joking and help us, demanded the captain while the others tried to make her let go of poor Urahara, who was already turning blue. Urahara cough, it was just a joke, you didn't have to act like that, the man said, offended, looking at the gray-eyed girl. Yorichi, well, stop joking and help Kisuke, said the annoyed golden-eyed girl. Urahara, well, I'm sorry, but I can't do anything, he answered while everyone glared at him. Ichigo, are you joking? You send us to the Soul Society. Of course you can help us, the orange-haired man said, annoyed. Urahara, that was different. I come from there, so I know how you get to the hollow world. I don't know, and I can't just say I want a door, and it will magically appear, she told them, smiling behind the fan. The air grew cold, nerves frayed, the air blew freezingly as everyone's blood stopped at the devilish voice that echoed through them all. You're going to help us, you hear? Ordered the penetrating voice of Orihime? Of course, whatever you send, I just need to do a little research. It will take me a little more than 3 months. He told her, scared. The girl's gaze shone dangerously and she felt chills. Urahara, 3 months, maybe I'll have it ready in 1, ha 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 ha, he laughed, scared, before running into his laboratory. Orihime, thank you very much, Urahara-san, the girl said sweetly and with a big smile, then turned to where everyone else was terrified and leaning against the wall. Orihime, is something wrong? She asked them, tilting her head slightly. Everyone immediately shook their heads nervously, laughingly, with a single general idea. Everyone, I didn't know she was so scary, laughed like crazy while the girl with the big eyes didn't understand anything. Back in the hollow world, the somewhat tired blonde had finished crushing the enemy army. Behind him, the fading remains of at least 100 hollows laid on the desert sand. He sighed. It was a good exercise. He walked away again when an explosion called in the distance. His attention of him, again his curiosity of him, got the better of him, and he ran towards the area in question, arriving quickly, spotting a reptilian-looking creature with a long tail full of scales and a long snout like a crocodile staring at something. The blonde looked carefully. Among the remains of a dead hollow was a small green figure crying uncontrollably. Why did you eat Nell's brothers?" said the small figure in a childish voice. "Hollow, I was hungry, and you will be the dessert." He laughed wickedly while the small figure tried to flee. That was when the blonde looked at her. She had human features. Naruto, a girl thought, scared, and attacked without thinking. The reptilian beast screamed in pain as his body was hit by the blonde's devastating blue energy. He moaned pitifully before collapsing to the ground. The blonde walked over to the little girl who was still crying inconsolably. The blonde tried to hug her, but she ran away from him, trying to hide behind the remains that were almost disappearing. "Naruto, don't be afraid. I don't want to hurt you," the blonde told her kindly while the little girl dressed in green walked away. "It's not true. You want to hurt Nell now that she's alone," she said, crying. The blonde caught her, and she struggled to free herself. "Naruto, don't cry anymore, it's over," he said, hugging her lovingly. The heat of the hug comforted the little girl, who hugged the blonde while she cried softly on his shoulder. With Halibel. Back at night, Halibel was with her faction of her in the presence of the Uchiha, who seriously looked at them. To tell the truth, the aura he gave off was not friendly at all, and the arrogant way he looked at everyone did not help his popularity at all. "Sasuke, you will come with me. Aizen-sama entrusted us with a very important mission," he told them, calm and arrogant as only he could be. "Halibel, I'll go alone with you," the third sword questioned her, slightly arching one of her eyebrows. "Sung Halibel-sama will never be alone with you," said the green-haired girl, outrageous at the idea of her being alone. "Apache, I'm sorry, we won't leave her alone with you," the blue-haired girl supports her with her annoying voice. Mila Rose the tomboy is right, the brunette told her immediately. The insulted one looked at her annoyed while she simply smiled. Sasuke, I was referring to all of you, not just her, the emo told them, turning around to leave the premises. Sasuke, I'll wait for you in half an hour at the end of the night, he told them, and the Uchiha left. For her part, something told the blonde woman that something was wrong. After all, so many errand cars were never sent on a mission if something didn't smell right in this matter, but she would still obey. Maybe Aizen was actually worried about her safety, although unfortunately she was wrong and she would soon realize it. For her part, Sasuke smiled evilly as he walked towards the exit of the compound. Sasuke, soon you will come to my dobe and I will have my revenge, and his malicious smile grew even more. With Naruto back with the blonde, he was still hugging the little girl who now calmer got away from the blonde. Her hood fell and the blonde stayed cold on her head. Above her pretty green hair was a cracked skull. It was a turn. Her big light brown eyes, he looked at the blonde somewhat sadly with that small scar on her face and that line on her face above her nose. The blonde smiled at her and introduced himself. Naruto, hello, my name is Naruto, the blonde said kindly, holding his hand. Nell, I'm Nell. Nice to meet you, Naruto, he said with a slight smile when he made a mistake when saying her name. Naruto, it's Naruto, Nell-chan. Naruto, the girl smiled a little at her affectionate suffix before becoming depressed at the loss of her friends. Naruto, don't be sad. Look what I can do, and the blonde exploded into a ball of smoke to reveal a small orange cat with blue eyes. Nell's eyes shined. Again the blonde exploded into smoke. Now an imposing falcon with light plumage rose with great bearing and elegance. The girl laughed happily. Another explosion, and now a beige pony stared at her. Nell, how beautiful, the green-haired girl told him before caressing the pony. Naruto, who allowed himself to be pampered. Nell, let me go up, asked him innocently. The blonde was tempted to refuse, but those big tearful eyes defeated him. Naruto climbs, and a little Arara climbed on top of him. He galloped through the desert sands while Nell laughed happily. In his head the blonde could hardly believe what he was doing for the girl. To tell the truth, he was happy that no one was watching him do this for the girl. In his head the insane laughter of Kuraishi and Kyubi resonated loudly, mocking the blonde. Naruto, that's all, it's over, the annoyed blonde told him, and then returned to normal with Nell in her arms, who looked at him somewhat sadly. Naruto, don't worry, I'll introduce you to a friend, the blonde said evilly. Half an hour later, and after an explosion, an almost suffocated Kyubi while the cheerful Nell lovingly hugged Q-chan, the blonde became serious while separating the fox from the girl. Naruto, Q-chan, you noticed it too, right? The blonde said to the happy fox. QBSI, your energy is unstable, almost as if they were containing it, the fox told her while the young green-haired girl looked at them confused. Naruto, do you think we can fix this? The blonde questioned him. QB, yes, I think you do want to do it, the fox asked him, receiving a nod from the blonde. Return to the interior of the blonde that shined covered in demonic chakra. Naruto, don't worry, Nell-chan, this is to help you, he said, generating confidence in the girl. The blonde's energy flooded the little girl's body. She glowed for a moment before an explosion took the blonde away. She immediately stood up while a slightly changed figure emerged from the dust. Naruto-kun, Nell's soft voice told him. Naruto Nel? The blonde said in shock as he looked at his new appearance. QB, Naruto-kun, you really have good taste, ha 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 ha. The fox in the blonde's head laughed at his expression of disbelief.
Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.